Oh, it's another room.
Okay. Anyway, there was a drama that they intended to take place. And it was almost like, you know how we have armchair warriors here? Where you have your big guys in the suits in the military and, like, you know, the high government people who sit there and they say, okay, we're going to move these troops over here and these troops over here, right? They go get millions of people killed, but they're not even they're nowhere near a battlefield. They're like flying around in airplanes, you know, so nothing can hit them on the ground, that kind of thing. Well, this is part of how the script was created in the Atlantean period. There was a big drama taking place between, and the drama didn't originally involve us. It involved the Wysadek matrix and the Phantom matrix. There were large numbers of forces in the Phantom matrix that they were fallen, and they wanted to stay fallen. They wanted to be masters of their own universe, but they didn't want the Wysadeks involved, because the Wysadek systems, the people of the Wysadek matrix were stronger. They had access to more frequency in reverse, and they were dominant and domineering, just like the ones in the Phantom matrix were. So there was a whole movement of various forces in the Phantom matrix that did not want the Wysadek blend. And then there were numbers of them that joined the Wysadeks and did. There was a final conflict drama, a final conflict battle that both had on the agenda. And neither cared much about what the angelic humans were doing, because they figured they'd get them out of the way and, you know, excuse us, we're having a war. The script had to do with mobilizing little armies of people down here. Now that meant they had to get control of people down here. That meant that each side had to try to get a critical mass of people down here, you know, where each side had their own little team lined up, and they'd be little soldiers that didn't know really even that the armchair warriors were there. The script had to do with, when the time came for the final conflict drama, there would be a mass battle, and this was foretold in Revelations and all of that. There would be a mass battle between the forces of the Phantom matrix and the forces of the Wysadek matrix, and those of the Phantom who went with them. And that battle is being fought in several places. The Orion system is in the middle of wars right now in Density 3 and 2. The Terran system is under attack, last time I heard. So this is not something that's just occurring here, but we are an integral part of the whole scheme. We're beginning to see the positioning of the soldiers right now. If we look at the news, we're beginning to see the ever so eloquent unraveling of the script as certain forces are moved, and seemingly rightfully so, to take certain political stands. And it's progressively intended to move us into a war situation that will start with little skirmishes here and there, and then will build. It's intended to build into a World War III drama. It's intended to build into that drama because there are only a number of key players that either side really care to have around. The ones they can't get control of are useless to them. They're just in the way. It's a way to get rid of a lot of what they consider expendable things that just take up resources. There's other motivations for the war script. Part of it has to do with, and they still haven't decided, last time the beloveds have heard, the fallen angelics, either side, have not decided whether or not they are going to stage a mass, like, I wouldn't say landing, more like appearance. I don't think we're going to have spaceships coming down and parking on the White House lawn anytime soon. But we may have lots of Mother Marys floating around on clouds and things, you know, and these kind of effects. There was a time when the original script, it was the Anunnaki script, the ones that were running the Anunnaki agenda from the Wysadek matrix Anunnaki, were intending to let us get into major war, lots of suffering, lots of all of that, to the point where they would come in as our angelic figures and tell us how to restructure our governments and what needed to be done. And this is part of this agenda is still being run. If you want to know about that agenda, just follow Galactic Federation's work, because they're putting it out still. And they talk about how when they come, they're of course going to show us how to create what they call their Christed civilization. So we're not to ask questions, we're just to do it. They're going to basically take over our governments and show us how to do it as we're welcomed into their Federation of Planets. This is part of the lie that's being run. And if you want, if you're interested, you can look into like Galactic Federation. They have websites and all of that kind of stuff. There's other ones being run now where it's it used to be easy to try to follow the agendas, because the Dracs had one set, the Weesodex had one set, and then the Anunnaki Rebellion people had another set of script that they were planning to run here. And whoever had control of the grids, that was going to be the script we were going to see. But since September of 2000, when the United Intruder Resistance was formed, because we got D12 here and they weren't expecting it, and it's the only way they could get anywhere was by joining forces, you now have what were 3 distinct scripts that were pretty straightforward as far as their events, blended into one, where they're taking a piece of this one and a piece of that one, and they're literally combining 3 programs that were programmed into the radial body of this planet. Each one of them programmed their own set of script into what digital hologram they would see here. Now it's being blended into one large script that has elements of the 3. So it's harder to track as far as exactly what's supposed to, this is going to happen and this is going to happen. But all of them had in common the final conflict battle, and all of them had in common the getting rid of undesirable elements of the population. Part of this has to do with the frequency fence that is progressively being built. That started in, September last year? It was September last year, wasn't it, when they started that? They let us know that, in fact, it was right before, the week before the 9/11 thing happened. They let us know that steps had been made, that the Illuminati agenda was advancing now, and they were beginning their frequency fence. And within a week, we had the 9/11 disaster and all that, and it was a trigger event to kind of mark the beginning. We're in the middle, or the beginning of the end, actually, of a drama that could get very, very weird as we move forward. We can expect, to some level, war. Now, what countries are going to be involved to what degree remains to be seen. The Middle East is going to keep going. It may die down a little. See, there's a way of playing with people, the masses, where it's almost like you cry wolf enough times, and then when the real thing is happening, nobody bothers to pay attention until it's too late, because they heard it so many times. They're desensitizing us right now to where we get to a point where we don't care anymore, because, oh yeah, they're fighting again, yeah, whatever. There's going to be a point where we'll see some of this. We'll see certain things flaring up in one area, and our attention will be there and be worried, is it going to go to where? Oh, no, didn't. See, they calmed down and they're not fighting anymore. Then it'll pop up over here. But eventually, in the next couple of years, probably it may be as early as 2003. I do believe somewhere around May of 2003, the next trigger event is going to be set in motion, and I believe that's probably going to be the United States and whatever it can get in its coalition going after Iraq. And that's going to set off some interesting things in the Muslim nations. Right now you're watching certain forces. I mean, now we have Christians and Protestants and Jewish people and Muslims and all these. If you look at countries, most of them are still at their core defined by a creed, by a spiritual, religious creed. That's where their roots are. The spiritual creeds that were set since Atlantis, each one were set by a different group of the fallen angelics that were trying to get and move their people for this time frame, so they'd be ready to be the little foot soldiers when this time frame came. People have been under mind control here for 25,000 years, to the point where mind control seems normal. Right now you're watching the Muslim forces being motivated to follow the script, to do their part in beginning the war. But you're also watching the Israelis be impulsed to do the same, and you are watching the other governments being impulsed to do the same. They're using ethics. They're using our belief systems, the things that are most dear to us, to motivate us to allow for horrendous actions to be permitted, because we're being shown that there's not another choice. All of the things that we're seeing right now are part of the script that was electronically programmed into the planetary grids and the planetary radial body, beginning in 25,500 BC. In 22,326 BC, it was all supposed to be done and over with, but the Guardian races intervened and they stopped the stellar activation cycle. It caused a partial pole shift, and it caused some cataclysmic earth changes on a smaller scale than have been before. But if that hadn't been done, none of us would be here to talk about it, and the whole place would have gone into the black hole matrix. At this point, we're doing better than we were in 22,326 BC. We could have been doing better than that if the Anunnaki had kept their agreements. But, woulda, coulda, shoulda. Doesn't do you much good. We are where we are. We're in Plan B, and Plan B has to do with becoming rapidly aware of the larger drama. We were getting aware of the big picture. Well, now we're getting aware of the huge picture, of where the big picture fits into. The huge picture, at its core, has Metatronics. When you hear the word Metatronics, it goes directly in hand with the Wysidex matrix. It is their mathematical coding, their hybridized, twisted mathematical coding, where they literally took creation mechanics and took portions of them. Like I explained before, if you had 12 subfrequency bands in each dimension, and you took half of this one, half of that one, and knocked out 9 through 12, you could have a base 8 system that you could plug the other parts in and create an anomaly of physics that would allow for a frequency drawing current, or a sucking current, where it could tap into other matrices and draw frequency in and literally hold together a universal structure or a body structure that was artificially sustained. It's through an artificial light-sound pattern. Artificial in the sense that it was not part of the organic divine blueprint, and it's operating on twisted mechanics. We're dealing with this now. Our radial body of the planet was altered through this process, along with a lot of other places. Our physical bodies are carrying what is considered the shadow of Gaia. There's a reason it's called Gaia. It's because these things, the Metatronic coding that began to be filtered into our system, didn't begin with Earth or with this last period of Atlantean history. It began way before. It began during the Gaian Wars that we talked about, the Orion-Gaian Wars 570 million years ago. During those wars, they were an absolute mess. It was one of those, if you're going to keep a chalkboard, a scoreboard, the Wysidex got a big point on that one because they took out the Azurite races. The Azurite races were the original guardian races of this time matrix. It was because of that the Orifim guardian races had to be created, because, meaning taking out the guardian races, the Azurites, they literally pulled a portion of Gaia, which was Earth's density 3 counterpart, and a number of other systems, particularly in Andromeda and Procyon and some of the Sirius systems. Sirius C went down. There used to be a Sirius C. We have Sirius A and Sirius B right now. There used to be a Sirius C. They were all dragged down into the Wysidex matrix. The Azurite races had come into the Phantom matrix. They had been sent into Phantom to try to help the Odedicron races to get out, because they were the ones that got stuck, the reptilian ones that got stuck, and they weren't even part of the drama intentionally. We had tried to get them out and to get any of the other races that wanted to do Emerald Covenant out of the Phantom matrix when the Wysidex broke through. When the portions of Gaia and some of the other surrounding systems went down, large numbers, huge numbers of the Azurite races were taken down into the Wysidex matrix. Some of them got stuck in Phantom because the full Phantom matrix didn't go down, only portions of it did. The ones that, the Azurite races that were sucked into Wysidex matrix were, once they were recoded to the Metatronic pattern, you can't get them out. So there were a large number of the original Ascended Master collectives that created the Azurites in this rescue mission, that there are fallen entities all over the place, because large numbers of them had gone down into the Wysidex matrix and were recoded. They became what was called the Azazel, which were a very dark race, and they look like the Azurite races as far as their physicality, because they took the Azurite race genetic imprint and they assimilated it and put the Wysidex consciousness in it. So we have a Gaian shadow in the sense that even from the period of the Azurite races, now what was created after the Azurite races 570 million years ago, about 568 million years ago, the Orifim were created. They took the Azurite pattern, the original Azurite gene code, and combined it and amplified it with more of the founders, Christos races imprint. But by taking on the Azurite gene code, we adopted a portion of the pattern that had a vulnerability to be intercepted through the Wysidex matrix. This was done in part to allow healing to occur for the Azurite races that got stuck in Phantom, that hadn't completely fallen yet. because by bringing the Orifeme in with that coding, we held their potential for bioregenesis, which means if you take an Orifeme and you take an Azurite from Phantom Matrix and you combine them naturally, you have them marry each other, and they have a baby. That baby is the beginning of a generation that is an advancement genetically compared to the fallen one before. And if you keep doing that, you build a race line. You can build a race line back up to what it originally was. So we took on, even in the creation of the Orifeme that the humans here came out of, we took on a commitment to assist the fallen races, particularly the guardian races that had fallen into the Phantom Matrix. Right now, that genetic propensity that we've had has been abused to a very large degree. When it comes to our recent history in the third seeding of the humans on this planet, that genetic propensity has been amplified as far as crossing it with more of the Metatronic races. So each of us now carry a genetic legacy that is partly Phantom, which is a reversed coding. It's partly Weesadek, which is a beyond the point of return reversed Metatronic coding, and the part of us that can get us through, which is the original divine blueprint that holds the imprint for everything in this time matrix. Angelic humans have the imprint of everything from D12 to D1 in this time matrix. The indigos, 1 and 2s, have everything from D15 on down for the indigo 2s, and everything from the primal sound fields on down, or the higher God worlds on down, for the indigo 1s that have 48 strands. On a personal level and on a race level right now, what we're dealing with is a shadow side that is genetically real. And it's the part of ourselves that's either going, what happens with our shadow is either going to make it or break it as far as which path of future evolution we end up on. There are some people that don't have 30% of their DNA templates, their original DNA templates left. They have been Metatronicked. They've had the fire sword initiations, which began in this particular line, in this particular seeding of the humans. It began in the Atlantean period after 25,500 BC, where certain groups, and these were begun with the Drac races, because the Dracs had actually gone over first. The Omicron Draconian races and the Leviathan races down here had gone over into joining, some of them had gone over into joining the Weesadeks first. So it began as a Draconian initiation. Then in 22,326 BC, it was actually 340 BC, right before that stellar activation cycle, when Thoth led his Leviathan races into Weesadek contracts. That's when more and more races were subjected to the fire sword initiations, and then those races were forcibly combined with angelic human and indigo races, so the virus spread. So we all have, to some degree, the Metatronic coding. The Metatronic coding means that we are susceptible to frequency fence. Frequency fence is beaming through the planetary grid something that doesn't belong there, that can alter the way the brain and the body works in relation to consciousness. A frequency fence is like an interference pattern. If you think about electronics, what do they call those things? The jamming frequencies? You know, if you're sending like a radio frequency, there's another type of frequency you can send through that to break it up so the transmission doesn't get to the other end the way it's supposed to. Yeah, scrambler. Yeah. Okay. Just like when you try to get the cable picture but you haven't paid for those channels, you know, right? Yeah. You pay for it, you get the, you can get the frequency through, but if not, there is a frequency fence that scrambles the coding. Well, the frequency fences that they use on a planetary level scramble the coding, the communication between the higher parts of your own identity and your 3D parts here. They scramble the operation between the brain and the emotions and the body and the spirit. Because we've all been subjected to some degree of Metatronic influence, we all have a susceptibility to that, even indigos. We all carry that with us. What it's going to culminate into is a path of the 3 paths of Genesis that are mentioned in the itinerary. There are 3 paths of evolution, and only 3, because we are now in the heroic probability, which means the divine blueprint is being reset. That means all sorts of other things are going to adjust themselves accordingly. There are 3 paths that the human beings and not just the human beings, but the plants and the animals and the minerals and the things you don't see that are two-dimensional, the elementals and things like that, that are going to evolve into. We have the path of Aramatena, which is the original D12 divine blueprint path of this time matrix. That is the path of freedom. It is a path of the Emerald Covenant. There is the path of Arimathea, which is the path of Metatron. That is a permanent path, because once the races make that shift, and it's like right now we have 2/3 of ourselves metatronically coded, but 1/3 is shut off. If you can recode back to its normal pattern, that half of that 2/3, so you only have 1/3 Metatronic and you're back to 2/3 of your normal template, you'll be able to not have your shadow drag you into Metatronic alignment. But there are races now, there are beings on this planet, people we know, people we care about, animals we know and animals we care about, plants we like and plants we care about, that have too much of the Metatronic coding to undo in the short period of time we have left before the separation occurs. There's one path left for people who have at least 30%, or beings, or things, or planetary grids that have 30% of the original divine blueprint, is the path of the host, which means they won't be able to hold enough frequency in their bodies to make the full plug-in to their own divine blueprint. There are certain guardian races, Rishi and Ascended Master collectives, that are assisting. They're literally sending frequency alternatives. They will be hosted into other time matrices that they're more compatible with, time matrices that will preserve them from being taken in to the Wissadet matrix. This is going to look very strange as the three paths of Genesis come upon us. And they're Genesis because they are literally new species are being born now before our eyes through this change. The original species of the angelic human and the indigo will be regenerated. It will be regenerated, but it's new compared to what it was, because now it also has portions of the Metatronic coding, which means it has abilities to heal certain types of beings that are in a phantom type situation that aren't fully gone. So there have been things we've learned and things we've acquired as humans and as indigos that are different from our original creation. It's an expanded creation compared to what we originally started as. There's a new creation, and this is what the United Resistance, the United Intruder Resistance, and the Wissadeks, their whole focus is on. They are creating a new master race right now. They are creating it here on Earth. The people that are hijacked into full Metatronic coding will be a new race. They will be a race that has what used to be indigo children turned into magentas. The magenta races, are going to be the highest coded fallen races that have ever lived, because they have the indigo coding of, they have 12 strands. And they can go into what they're trying to do with the indigo races, turning them into magentas, is take them from a 11.5 strand reverse potential into a 12.5 strand reverse potential. Divine blueprints at D12. They are creating their own divine blueprint for their matrix, a reversed one, an antichristos one. There are people that many of us will know, people that hang out with Archangel Michael and a few other very popular speakers. Some of the people who follow traditional religions that since Atlantis have been distorted into something they weren't intended to be. These are the new bodies that the Metatron people are going to use to create their master race. However, a lot of the people in those bodies were the people that incarnated out of those matrices in the Phantom Matrix to begin with. So it's not as horrendous a level of victimization as one might think on the surface. On this planet, there's been a continual and progressive infiltration of the fallen angelic races from Phantom Matrix. And after Wissadet got involved, also from Wissadet Matrix. In the Atlantean period, the Leviathan races, which were originally a hybrid, I'll talk about them briefly in a minute, because some of you may not know what I'm referring to when I talk about Leviathan, and I will go over this page quickly, creation of the Leviathan. But In the Atlantean period, anyway, there was a huge influx of both fallen angelic souls from the Phantom Matrix and from the Wysadek Matrix, where a huge number of the people on the planet right now weren't originally human to begin with. Right now, they're wearing the mask of a human body, just like we are. What we call a human body right now is a mutation. This isn't what a human body looks like. A human body is much taller. It's much lighter in density. It's about, three times less dense than what we are right now. It has abilities of all sorts of things, like levitation and appearing and disappearing, Merkaba, and all sorts of things. What we've all been living is a shared mutation. That mutation was done, we have what's called the base 4 mutation, where we have 4 nucleotide bases that make up our base DNA. And this applies to plants and everything else on this planet. In the Atlantean period, between 25,500 BC and 9,558 BC, this mutation into an all-oneness, where we all wore the same faces so we couldn't tell each other apart anymore, that's when it was orchestrated. It was orchestrated for the purpose of meeting at this time, where you wouldn't be able to tell a human from a non-human. And we would all think, and we would all have our memories wiped to the point where we didn't know where we came from. We had different ideas that were fed to us from somewhere that ended up in books that, became things that people killed each other over, that kind of thing. So when we begin to see some of the changes that are going down, and we begin to realize that there are 3 distinct paths that people are falling into. What is 3? All right. The path of, that's the 3rd one. Aramatena, Arimathea, and path of the host, which is get you out of here in whatever way possible, because you can't make it into the path of Arimathea. We've got to get you somewhere so you don't go into the other path, basically. That's what that is. And that will be, there will be a lot of diversity in that. It will depend. All of us have different stellar coding. We have the same imprint as far as, human, or some of us that aren't human. Some of us came from other places, and we really are, we're sharing the human mutation, or the Homo sapien mutation, let's say, but we're not even, human. Some of us are other types of guardian races that we're working with the guardians of this time matrix. There's Syrians here. There's Lyrans here. There's all sorts of beings here that might not have even come fully through the Orifeme imprint. But they were able to pick it up in Atlantis, because it was a free-for-all in Atlantis with the genetic stuff they were doing. So that can be used to advantage as well. It'll be interesting as we progress in our personal development, because we'll find out who and what we are. Like we'll find out, well, gee, I guess I didn't do an Orifeme thing. Gosh, I'm like blue. I'm a Syrian blue. Yeah, that's an Azurite. Some people are Azurites. If you see yourself, if you start to get images of a blue Syrian as your Syrian self, where you're very tall and thin, and many of you have no hair, but have very fine feathers, but very human-like faces, and very elegant beings. Some will even have wings. Some of them have, they were crossed with more of the Seraphi races, and they have feathered wings and things. Others are just blue hominids. Kind of like that Farscape show. The Farscape show, they have the blue lady. Yeah, well, we love watching that for her, because she's the way she looks is very, very close to certain races that came out of the Azurites. One of them are the Maharaji. The Maharaji are blue humans that are right now the guardian races of Sirius B, and they're also the ones that interacted with Hindu culture here physically at various times. They will be one of the races that we will eventually meet. The Iani will be first, because they look more like us and it'll be less traumatic, and then and they will assist us in getting to know the ones they work with, which are the Maharaji, which are the blue humans. But right now we're in an interesting place, and that place, the main events that led us to this place took place in the last Atlantean period drama. In that drama, the script was written and programmed into the radio body. The script didn't finish running It just started running in 22,326 BC when the Guardian races shut the gates, which means they pulled the plug on the computer so the program couldn't run. Well, the plug is back in now. Fortunately, it's on a D12 current. It's like upgrading it from well, in the States we have 110 and 220 electrical current. I don't even know what it is in European countries. But we have an upgrade as far as the current running. But the program is still in the grids. It's still in the radio body. And it's a program because we're all connected to the planetary radio body. Our own radio bodies exist as part of the planetary radio body. It means there's going to be a script that begins running through our own radio bodies, which runs through our DNA, which will be a script on a personal level of impulses, feelings, sometimes thoughts. We never stop to think, oh, I'm thinking, where did that thought come from? We assume it's ours. It's going to be a good time to become aware of the fact that not every thought that moves through your head belongs to you. Not every feeling that runs through your emotional body belongs to you. All right. Did you ever stand next to somebody who was having like a real bad day and you could just feel the negative energy coming off them, right? And did you ever find that you went home and a couple hours later you're just feeling really yucky? And you can't think of a reason why. You took on, through field resonance, some of the stuff that was standing next to you. You're processing through your own system. And the healers have a big problem with this sometimes if they don't know how to clear that out, because you will start to take on the scalar waveforms from other beings or things around you. Now, this can be done purposely as well, and this is how the script technology works. There's an interface with the human biosystem, with the Homo sapien biosystem, that allows the radio body programs that are being sent through Nibiru and through Wormwood from Wysadek to move through our systems, where it's almost like having an angel and a devil on your shoulder, where you have one saying, oh, I really like the Azurite teaching. It's like I can feel the freedom there. The other saying, oh, no, that's evil. It's telling you not to like Archangel Michael. It's telling you not to like Jehovah. You know, I mean, it can create, if you let it, this polarity in yourself that's very, very hard to rectify until you start asking yourself the question, where did that thought come from? Do I own it? Is it mine? Or am I having help thinking that thought? If we can realize, we get a whole lot more help than we ever thought. And it's scary when you think about it. This is like, it's like soul rape, what's being done here, not to mention mind rape, because you're literally having something put things in your mind. It's like one of those horrid sci-fi movies that, you know, they have a technology that will let them beam into your brain things that make you do what they want you to. They do have this technology, and it's being used here. It has been since Atlantis. But now is the final big hurrah in the game, when they turn on all the switches and all the programs. Now, if you're working with D12 frequency, and particularly if you're working with the Vecca codes, you will progressively build an immunity to that, where you will progressively, you might start realizing that there's a weird space you can realize when you start to feel like, wow, it's like a CD is playing in my head. That's not mine. You'll start to find this whole cluster of ideas or thoughts, sometimes it's emotions, that, you know, where in the world does that fit? And they're usually yucky, or they're meant to direct you in a certain way, and they really seem like they belong to you until you really stop your consciousness, get calm, and say, what is this? Where is it coming from? Do I own it? And really realize you might not. All right? I mean, once you realize you don't own it, then you have to own it, which means you have to say, okay, I'm not going to blame anybody for this. What am I going to do with it? Because the idea is to stop it from influencing you. The antidote to the radio body programming, which I call the CD in your head, is that's really what it works like. It's a CD that's operated off something called the Metatronic seed atom. And these are clusters of literally those, you know how we talked about the eyes, the lenses, the refraction polarization lenses? Well, these were built into part of our atomic structure here through the Metatronic mutations. So we have within our bodies a Metatronic seed atom that is the disc player. And it's through that we receive information from the radio body program that's running through the planetary grids. And it literally plugs into our personal little disc player and begins to run the CD. And it's like a CD-ROM in your head. There is only one antidote to that. If you can recognize that it's there, you need to do that before you'll realize you need an antidote. But it's not something you can rationalize with or reason with. It's not a part of your natural, even shadow self, that you're going to say, okay, well, I'll embrace you with love and I'll heal you. you can look at it as an electronic program. It's not going to respond to you as a person because it isn't a person. It's a program. It's energy. And there's only one way to not have that energy move through your system, and that's use energy in the right way to block that from being able to affect your system. That's where running the D12 and higher frequency and the natural mathematics that go with the body pattern, the Vecca codes and the Eka codes, that's where they all come in. These are the things that will give us the most protection from the Metatronic atom program. And we're all living with this. This is our Gaian heritage because it began with the fall of the Azurite races and the creation of races that had the Metatronic atom coding. And that's, if you want to look at the Metatronic atom, it's the seven spheres as opposed to the 15 spheres. You know, they talk about the seed of life and those kind of things, which is the seed of the flower of life, those kind of things. They are built on the seven, and they form a particular type of Merkaba field. They form the Bivecca Merkaba field, which is fine if you let it keep growing until its natural Trivecca Merkaba that it's supposed to. But it's a phase-locked Bivecca Merkaba that the bottom part of the bottom can't spin. This is part of what our Merkabas are doing right now. It's part of what the planetary Merkabas are doing right now, and it's part of what we're trying to overcome. Now, the history of the Atlantean mess, as I tend to refer to it, it's fascinating. There's a huge amount of detail. On this page, where it says Creation of the Leviathan Force and related history, this gives you a basic idea of a little bit of what came before, just a real rough rundown. We have 250 million years ago, a angelic human seeding one took place on parallel Earth, and they were called the Palladorian cloisters. 25 million years ago, the 5 Palladian cloister races were seeded on Earth over here. So we've been here for 25 million years. 5,500,000 years ago, human seeding 1 on Earth was destroyed in the electric wars. 3,700,000 years ago, human seeding 2 was started. 848,800 years ago, human seeding 2 was destroyed via the Thousand Years' War. And all of these wars, guess who they were with? It's like the same beings. It was the Anu Elohim and the fallen Draconian races versus the Emerald Covenant races. And it was all about Templar quest, which is territorial quest for the Stargates. But it wasn't just Stargates on one planet. It was Stargates in this whole 15-dimensional time matrix that they were after. Now, 798,000 BC, we had the 5 Palladi-Urtite cloister races were seeded here. This was seeding 3, the beginning of seeding 3. You can read, because I'm not going to go into talking just about our seedings. What I want to do is get to the Leviathan races. Just know from 798,000 BC, that was the beginning of our 3rd seeding, and our races progressively, were put here, the angelic human and the indigo races. Then, there were a couple of other things that happened where between 669,000 BC and 250,000 BC, there were the Rama and the Templar wars, and these were a mess. You had Anunnaki and Draconian invasions from all over, spaceship invasions. Things coming in with like sonic beams, photosonic beams that could make matter dematerialize when it got hit with it. Big wars, that kind of thing. We had a race of pre-Leviathan fallen angelic hybrid things called the Nephidim. They were Draconian, and another called the Urantia. These were Jehovian Anunnaki hybrids. These were the beginning of the Illuminati races. The Illuminati races were upgraded from this point and merged with something else. Now, that I'll talk about in a minute. In this period of the Rama and Temple wars, the races, the Nephidim and the Urantia races, were not able to fully procreate with angelic human races. They were originally created through forced laboratory experimentation in some of the earlier seedings. And in some of the earlier seedings, in seeding 2, there was an experiment done, again, a bioregenesis experiment to try to help the fallen ones, that allowed natural procreation between the angelic human races and a certain small collective of fallen ones supposed to be not, wanting to get out of being fallen. And that turned into absolute disaster. That's where we ended up with a seed race that went on, and they took it off planet. The fallen angelics took it off planet and it became kind of like a core genetic template to upgrade their progressive building of a master invader race. Now, we learned our lesson in seeding 2, so we weren't going to do that again right away. And in seeding 3, the angelic human races and the indigo races were created in a way that they could not naturally hybridize, naturally procreate with any of the fallen angelic forces, which gave them protection from the fallen angelic forces. In 250,000 BC, there was a period of time where you had what are called the Pleiadian, Nibiru, and Anunnaki races. They're from Nibiru and from the Pleiades star system. These were the guys that in Sumerian history came down as Enki and Enlil and Marduk. Those gods. Yeah, they were gods. They were race lines that, when we get into the genealogies, that we won't get too heavily into today, but these were race lines of fallen angelic Anunnaki races. Some of them crossed with one thing, some of them crossed with another. The Enki, Enlil, and Marduk races, Anunnaki races, were considered, what do they call them? You had the Jehovian, there's a name, the Anu Seraphim. These were called the Anu Seraphim Anunnaki races. They weren't the original strain. The original strain were Anu Elohim, out of the Giovanni crew, and they were called the Jehovian Anunnaki races. The Jehovian Anunnaki races looked at themselves as the true, pure strain Anunnaki, and they didn't like the other ones. The other ones had crossed with various ones of the fallen Seraphi, be it draconian ones or some of the things that the draconians had created. So the Pleiadian Nibiruan Anunnaki races are Anunnaki races that have partial Seraphi or draconian type coding. You have the Enki, Enlil, Marduk groups. What were the full names of those? They're in Voyages, Volume 2. The Enki Zephelium. Okay, Enki Zephelium races, the Enlil Odedicron. Okay, so if you look at the Enki Zephelium, now Zephelium are one of the fallen races that are connected to the Zeta races that we talk about now. And they were a reptilian snake type cross. Okay, so you took Anunnaki, which was a core Anunnaki, was an aquatic ape. All right, that was the original form. An aquatic ape hominid was the original Anunnaki form. So you take that and you cross it with, for an Enki family line, they would crossed it with the Zephelium. So it's Enki Zephelium. That's the Toth line. All right. Now Toth was a Nibiruan Anunnaki. He was out of the Enki family. Okay. Now Enlil crossed with Odedicron, so they call him the Enlil Odedicron. Now that would be a more reptilian, fully reptilian, as opposed to snake, more of a reptile, think salamanders and things. Okay. Then you have the Marduk group, which crossed with Omicron, which were the dragon moth people and the dinoids. So these are the Anu Seraphim Anunnaki races. And they've forever been trying to get the territory here. These are the ones that set up the Nibiru Datic crystal grid in 25,500 BC. But way back in 250,000 BC, they were coming in here speculating for various things. One of the things they were speculating for was gold, because they had depleted Nibiru's resources of organic gold. Now, they used gold in a very specialized way. They, through laboratory ionization, they call it, they create what's called, in contemporary terms, and it used to be called this in Egypt too, white powder gold, which is a substance that has the ability to create, let's say, electrical sparks within the atomic structure that allow more energy to be pulled in from the field around you, so it assists in sustaining immortal life. Not eternal life, but immortal life. There's a difference. You don't want to be immortal. Eternal, yes. Immortal, there are better things to do. But because they were running out of natural gold in their planetary system, and the Pleiadian system was devoid of it, it didn't have any to mine, Earth was very rich in organic, elemental gold. They literally, on Nibiru, once they created Nibiru in a way where it was in its artificial orbit, and it's an orbit that runs partially through the Phantom Matrix and then back up through our gates and into our system. It used to be in our system completely, but when it fell, they created an orbit that runs between the two systems, and every 3,657.8 years it cycles back through. So to sustain their atmosphere, They had literally changed their atmosphere, and you found a way to imbue this elemental gold ionized particulate structure into this white powder gold substance into their atmosphere, so they breathed it. And after many generations of that, it sustained the Metatronic body, is what it did. It helped to sustain the Metatronic body. After many generations of this, they couldn't survive without it. And there was all sorts of mutations happening on their planet with their peoples because they were running out of the amounts of gold needed to create this in the atmosphere. So they were on speculation journeys, trying to find places where they could rob more gold from. And this is where we got our original value of gold, actually, why it's so important. That was an Anunnaki trait. It's very important to the Anunnaki races because it helps them to sustain their immortal status in their bodies. And now that their bodies are mutated fully into the Metatronics, if they don't have some degree of that frequency that's created through white powder gold in their systems, they begin to rapidly deteriorate. Their physical forms rapidly begin to deteriorate, and their consciousness begins to fragment because they don't have a soul structure anymore that they're directly connected to. So, in 250,000 BC, you had the Enki, Enlil, and Marduk, Pleiadian, Nibiru, and Anunnaki coming in and attempting to mine gold. And they started warring with each other because nobody liked to work the mines. And it was like, well, why should we work the mines? You work the mines. And they started to war with each other. So they decided to end that war amongst themselves. They were going to create a slave race, a slave race that would do the mining for them. And we were on the planet at the same time. The angelic humans and the indigos were. And we were in certain parts, usually associated with the Stargate and the Q-site locations. They were always our seeding grounds. And there are lots of raids by these guys trying to, grab humans and do things with them. But they decided to they didn't want something as intelligent as an angelic human, because you're not going to control it, basically. They wanted something a cross between an animal and something that had some degree of intelligence where you could put it on autopilot and it would do what you told it to. So they created a race called the Lulkus. They created the Lulkus by taking their own imprint, their aquatic ape hominid imprint, and combining it with the gene code, a small portion of the genetics of angelic humans that had been captured in their raids. And they did it in a laboratory. They created it in a laboratory, like our scientists are starting to play around now. And they combined it with the angelic human, their aquatic ape, and I believe two other. One was an ape-like strain of animal from Nibiru, and the other was a monkey strain. It was a strain of monkey primate from from this planet. And what they came up with, or what our scientists call the Neanderthal. That was the beginning, and that's where the Neanderthals fit in. These had nothing to do with human evolution. They weren't a part of it at all, but boy, have they tried to put Darwinian theory in there, so we start to think of ourselves as them. All right, so they created the Lulkus Neanderthal. They were called the Lulkus. They were a primate hominid slave race, and they were able to create them, and they had a certain sophistication of intelligence, even though other ways they were very slow-witted compared to what a human is now, even now as Homo sapiens. But they had genetics that had a little bit of the angelic human imprint because of the part that they had literally robbed from the gene code. It's like grabbing a body, killing the person, but taking part of the DNA and using a select part of that DNA to cross it with other DNA. This is how they did it. It's laboratory messing. All right, so that created the slave races of the Neanderthal. In 246,000 BC, there was, and this was like the beginning of a new wave of evolution after the Rama Wars and the Temple Wars, where they created a mess. I mean, it was getting close to becoming another Electric Wars situation where everything got destroyed. And finally, there were some agreements made. And in 246,000 BC, the Maharaji, which are the blue humans from Sirius B, on behalf of the Iani and the founders, brought in the Emerald Covenant restatement, which brought in the information about the Emerald Covenant again, brought in the CDD plates, and said, any of you, be you hybrid or not, if you want to join the Emerald Covenant, you can. So this is when we were given the last set of CDD plates, the ones that we're drawing information from now. They were given in 246,000 BC. Now, interestingly, all of the angelic humans agreed to, yes, of course we want to do Emerald Covenant. We've always been Emerald Covenant. But the Toth Enki Anunnaki decided to go over into the Emerald Covenant at that period. So that was 246,000 BC when Thoth, as a being, Thoth was an Anunnaki being, entered the Emerald Covenant for bioregenesis to get their DNA template back. Now, Thoth went through, as a person, went through his own levels of bioregenesis, and he did very, very well. He got up to 11 strands, but he didn't get the 12th one before he bailed out and went the other way. But the Thoth, Enki, Anunnaki races, they entered for bioregenesis, and there was a series of steps in this bioregenesis that was taken. It wasn't all, you didn't get all of the strands healed immediately. There was a progressive integration of one strand after another that would take place over numerous generations to slowly build up the pattern of the D12. The angelic human hybrid strand would be put into the Anunnaki strands. What it would do is if you look at the strands, is one angelic human strand had all the natural mathematics of the divine blueprint that goes with this time matrix. The Anunnaki strand had it all in reverse and didn't have 12, units. Okay, so we have 12 units in one angelic human strand. They only had 11 units. The draconian ones only had 10 units in each strand. So they had to progressively, for each strand, build up a 12 subharmonic pattern where they'd get that extra back and reverse it back to its natural mathematics before they would be compatible with the frequencies in the natural time matrix, before they could run the divine blueprint frequencies again. So this was what this experiment was about. It wasn't an experiment to see what had happened. It was an experiment that was done, a healing experiment that had the objective of healing this particular group of Anunnaki who decided to go into the Emerald Covenant. In 208,216 BC, this was a stellar activation cycle, and consistently with the rest of our history, during every stellar activation cycle, there's an invasion of some sort, and there was a Drac invasion this time, and it created what was called the Fall of Brennaway. This was when, literally, in doing the round tables, all right, the rainbow round tables that the guardian races were always appointed to do to run the Templar here in order to assist the planet in grounding the Stargate frequencies. They were infiltrated and invaded, and the rounds began being run in reverse because people were careless, and there was a lot of intermarrying between Nephidim, draconian hybrids that supposedly were being good guys now working the Emerald Covenant, and angelic human races. And angelic humans didn't realize that they were getting code reversals in their DNA template, so when they ran the rounds, they ran them in reverse. And there's a major pole shift that took place in that period because, again, the gates had to be shut. They had to be shut, or our whole template, Earth's template, would have gone into phantom matrix completely. So in 208,216 BC is when we lost our ability to run D12 frequency, because what's called the stellar bridge, which is that frequency spiral, the Merkaba spiral of the universal level, that spirals the frequency down from D12 through all the universal gates to us, it's supposed to anchor on what's called a 12-code pulse. 12-code pulse means every dimensional frequency band has 12 subharmonics. It didn't. It anchored on a 10-code pulse, and they blocked the other part out with the reversal of the round tables. So from that point on, we were like sitting ducks here because we didn't have D12 frequency available. We only had D10 frequency available. That means we couldn't reset anything with the divine blueprint without the D12 frequency to come in and reset it. So after this, life went on. There was a pole shift, and there was the races during these times were taken into the inner earth, like the angelic human races, and any of the hybrid races that could sustain the strand activation would be taken into inner earth and allowed to hang out there until it stabilized on the surface. Then they'd be brought back out, and the angelic humans were always reseated on the 24 sites, the 12 Q sites and the 12 Stargate sites. That was their home, and their DNA is literally keyed to those grids. So we all have literally a place on the planet that we belong to, and it technically belongs to us. We belong to each other. All right, now. In 155,000 BC, this is when the Anunnaki bioregenesis program begins in full. Now, way back in 246,000 BC is when the Thoth Enki group entered the Emerald Covenant, but it wasn't until 155,000 BC, because of all the chaos that was going on, that it actually began, where the hybridization program began. And the Lucas Neanderthal races, because they had a little bit of the human imprint, were used as the base species for this hybridization. So the Lucas Neanderthal were combined with a pattern, a piece of the DNA from another race called the Hibernian humans. The Hibernian humans had to do with seeding too, and certain races that were created through hybridizing between human and Anunnaki races. They were a type of Nephilim, actually, Nephilim human, but they were of the Ruby order that were trying to get their full imprint back originally. So upgrade number 1, they went from Locust Neanderthal to what are called the Luhari, which was Cro-Magnon 1. And then in 152,000 BC, the Luhari hybrids were crossed with the Urantia Urtite cloister humans, and upgrade 2 was done, and they created the Iluli Levi. Here we get the races of Levi and such. This is where we get the word Leviathan. Now, the Iluli Levi, Cro-Magnon 2, was the first one of the hybrids that was capable of natural procreation with a human, where it could actually conceive a child and bear a living child with a human. The others were still not genetically compatible to that degree, where fertilization would most often not occur, and if it did, it would be highly mutated and it would die. You know, the child could not be born by them. This began the chaos, technically speaking, because if you now have a hybrid race, and if you get a hold of that hybrid race and you're a fallen angelic, and you know that race can now naturally procreate, all you have to do is have your hybrid race rape humans, and you will create progressively more of your own in human form. And this is what began the craziness that became the Leviathan invasion. But the bioregenesis continued for the races. The Tothenki groups were still part of this. They were still working with it. And the Tothenki groups are interesting because, remember how I said before, they were of the Anu Seraphim, which means they were Anunnaki combined with certain of the fallen Seraphim, which were the Draconians or the Reptilians. So they could actually, by using their DNA, they could actually allow for both Draconian races to incarnate into them and Anunnaki races. So it was a hybrid form that could be used to do bioregenesis for both fallen Seraphim races like the Draconians or Reptilians and fallen Anu Elohim races like the Anunnaki. That was also part of the downfall because both of them could infiltrate that race, therefore. All right. So 152,000 BC, we had Cro-Magnon 2, the Iluli Levi races. From the Iluli Levi races, it went up from there. 151,000 BC, upgrade 3 was done. Iluli Levi became Iluli Judah. This is where we get the races that were transposed in our biblical text. They're not our tribes of Israel. These are the tribes of the Leviathan, and they were not part of those original biblical texts. The original 12-tribe human races were part of those original texts, and they transposed their race identity and their records into our books. Okay. 150,000 BC, there's a mess, but we had a glacial period after that one because the Jehovian Anunnaki attacked here and tried to take over, but they didn't win. But they crashed the firmaments, which are called hydrosuspension fields, that controlled the planetary climate. We actually had planetary climate control at various periods where you could, kind of like your car or your house, you set it on climate control, how much humidity you want, what temperature you want, that kind of thing. You can do that with the crystal pylon temples of inner earth, of the, Eka line. They can modulate the frequencies here in a way that through our gates we can get climate control. And, when they're working properly. So in the Jehovian wipeout in 150,000 BC, we had a glacial period because a large part of our firmaments, or the hydrosuspension fields, collapsed. 148,000 BC, the next upgrade was done. The upgrade 4 created the Iluli Nephi races. And then there was a whole bunch of these guys, the Nephi races, that were infiltrated by Jehovian Anunnaki and created the what are called the Nephites. This is why certain teachings say, hail the return of the Nephites. They're supposed to be coming back in this time period. Not something to hail unless you're looking forward to becoming a Jehovian Anunnaki. And these, large numbers of these, have joined the Wesedek groups, from this history forward. So the return of the Nephites has to do with the return of the Metatronic coding. Here we go again. Every stage of this hybridization program had its pros and its cons. Meaning pros, that it was actually serving the purpose it was intended for the ones who stayed in the Emerald Covenant, the Thoth groups, then other ones that came in. One of the ones that came in later, I believe, in fact, in this period, I think, this was the first period they came in, I think, yeah, 148,000 BC, the being called Enoch, who had been an ascended master, and the good guy side had come in and incarnate specifically through the Jehovian Anunnaki fallen pattern to be able to try to bring them back up into bioregenesis. The Enoch crew got involved, and these were the Arcturian Jehovian Anunnaki races from the Arcturus system, from Orion and Arcturus, and they were different from the Pleiadian Iberian ones, and they tended to not like each other very much. They got involved with the Nephi level. They came into the experiment at the Nephi level, and so then you had two groups of Leviathan race, or Leviathan because they're all out of Levi, but usually we use Leviathan in terms of the Illuminati, what became the Illuminati. But there were two branches of these hybrid races that were created. One were the sons of Belial, and the others were the sons of Zadok. And these are, which were the reversals of, they were originally the sons of Lilib, the Lilibim, which were Thoth's crew, the ones that were on the good side. And this is where you get like the Lilith mythologies that come out of that. And the Zadokim, or the Kodazim. And they actually reversed the letters once groups of them became fallen. They reversed them. So you had the Lilibim turned into the sons of Belial, and you had the Kodazim becoming the sons of Zadok. And these became prominent figures in the Atlantean period. I mean, at this point, we're still not into the height of Atlantean culture yet. These are, Atlantean civilization really didn't come into being until, let's see, when was it? When the Atlantean root race was seeded. Atlantis was, the place was there, the cloister races were there, but it wasn't technically called Atlantis. That was a root race. It was a smaller race than the human cloister races that were coming in. It was a smaller branch of the human races. So anyway, this is the step-by-step process that the Leviathan or the Illuminati races were created from. They were progressively crossed, and the idea was to get them up to strand 5, where they would take the reverse 11 DNA pattern and work strand 1 all the way up to strand 5 into non-reversal through the hybridization. At that point, they could pass through Stargate 5 into the Terran time field in density 2. You could get them out of here, and they could continue their evolution from there to get the next set of strands. But all along, every step of the way, there were raider races, fallen angelics, that came in and grabbed portions of them and hybridized with them and then used them as tools to create their little armies where they would go raid other villages. I mean, it's still, even in our recorded history, it's classic, the plundering of one group that conquers another. They come in, they rape the women, they, trash the society, they force their belief systems on them. Well, there are continually more children being born by the raping of angelic human females. They would very often come into a village, raid it, kill the males, and rape the females, and kidnap them, keep them until they found out whether they conceived or not. And if they conceived, they would, bear the children. There's a big hatred vibe that a lot of women carry from being a part of that time period where they hate children. And when they have their own children, they don't mean to hate children, but this emotional thing comes up where there's almost a desire to kill children because there was a violation that was done in that period, like in this pre-Atlantean period, where you were being forced to carry something that somebody else forced you to get pregnant with that was not going to have a human soul. It was going to have a fallen angelic soul. They would birth dark avatars in this way, and the women that were angelic humans that were forced into this type of breeding felt not only violated, but they knew they were contributing to the potential downfall of this planet. So there was a whole movement in the female consciousness that went into killing their offspring whenever they could, because they knew the souls coming into them were not human, and they were, of the other side. So this is some of the stuff we're still healing on a deep level. Women have a lot of that, and there's an anger that was in men they felt very emasculated in the whole situation. They come in and be killed. They didn't want them for anything because they weren't gestation chambers like females were. So there's a lot of things we're still processing from this period. The Leviathan races, by the time we got up to, let me see, where, the last, number 5, the fifth upgrade. The fifth upgrade didn't come until 68,000 BC. That's because there was a whole lot of other crazy things, like from 148,000 BC to 75,000 BC. That's a long period of time. It was called the Anu occupation. Humans actually lived underground because the Pleiadian Nibiru Anunnaki had got together and they'd come in and they'd taken over surface Earth. So they literally took over surface Earth and destroyed anything that wasn't of theirs, and were trying to either kill or kidnap and use human populations. So literally human civilization went underground. A lot of us will have cellular memory that's about that, where we'll actually remember times when we were so sensitive we could hear a footstep hundreds of feet up above us, because we lived underground. There are still many chambers that are left of the civilizations that were there, and there are other ones that were run by the negative ones as well, because there were periods when they went underground in relation to the dinoids, the dinosaur things. But anyway, because of the craziness that took place, that's a very long period of time. This is why the Anunnaki decided they owned the planet, because they come in and stole it, so they figured it's theirs. That's the typical, it's really the typical thing if you look at any of the politics that we're in the middle of right now. I mean, they're all fighting over stuff they stole from somebody else in the first place. It's like, anyway, when we get up to 68,000 BC, they finally did the last upgrade, and this was taking them from the Eluli Nephi up to the Anu Melchizedeks. This is where they were crossed with the fifth strand. They picked up the fifth angelic human DNA strand, the cloister strand of the Melchizedeks. And this is out of these guys, they end up with the Templar Melchizedeks. And the Templar Melchizedek priesthood, which is the total opposition to the cloister. Once in a while, when they decide to enter the Emerald Covenant, they actually assist. But most of the history, the Templar Melchizedeks were the ones that were the front men and beings for the Wesedeks. And there was a version of them that were also in the Phantom Matrix. So you had a division between them. One was for the Wesedek bonding, the other, Metatronic bonding. The other group of them was for the Phantom bonding. But both of them were not anything to do with the Emerald Covenant. And right now, most of the Melchizedeks on the planet, the ones that woke up first, the ones that are going around and transmitting frequency to everybody and initiating them into the Melchizedek priesthood, most of them are Templars, which means most of them are Anunnaki. So, anyway, this was the progression, and I wanted the people who didn't hear this before to understand the progression of where these Leviathan Illuminati races that we talk about, where they came from. And it also answers the question of the Darwinian stuff. Where did the Neanderthal and the Cro-Magnon, where do they fit? Were these our human ancestors? No, they were not. They were the hybrid ancestors. The only connection to human they had was a little bit of human genetics that was put into their pattern to assist them to evolve to a higher level. They are not what we came out of at all. But there's been a whole movement since Atlantis. It was part of the Luciferian covenant, which was an agreement made by the fallen Anu Elohim races, the Anunnaki races, that they would progressively orchestrate something called transposition of race identity, where progressively, using radio body programming, using progressive genetic infiltration, they would transpose their race identity over the angelic human and the indigo race identity, and they would take over the planet. And taking over the planet meant bringing it into Phantom and then into Wesedek Matrix. So this has been a long, long process here. This will give you some idea of how much we've all invested in this drama. There's a lot of vested interest going on here. This is why they're not going to say, "Oh, they're busted. They're blowing the whistle on us. They're telling on us. We'll just go away." They're not going to do that. This is the ending point of this drama and the beginning of a new series of dramas. 3 new ones, in fact, 3 new paths of Genesis. Now, from Atlantis, I want to show you really quickly. We start with the fact that you have these races, one collective of hybrids that are being run by the Thoth collective that are Pleiadian Nibiruan, and another group that came from the Nephi level and up. that were run by the Enoch group. Now, the Enoch group was representative of the Jehovian Anunnaki, the ones that considered themselves the pure strains, that they weren't mixed with the Seraphim. Then you had the Toth ones that were the Anu Seraphim, the mixed ones. So you had four basic groups at this point. You had the Lilibim, which were the ones of Toths that were still on the Christos evolutionary path, and then you had the ones that were made of reversing the DNA of those guys, and they were the sons of Belial. And you had on the Enoch side the Kodazim, which were the ones still in the Christos path, and then the Zadokim, the sons of Zadok, which were the ones who went into reversal. Now, they didn't go into reversal all at once. There were experiments being made by hijacking them at every stage of evolution, but it really came to a head where the formalization of the sons of Belial and the sons of Zadok came in the Atlantean period after 25,500 BC. It began with 22,326 BC when Thoth's group defected from the Emerald Covenant, and Thoth made deals with the Anunnaki races from Alpha and Omega Centauri. This is what you get where you get the Alpha and Omega Order Melchizedek races or Melchizedeks. For anybody that knows about the Melchizedek, ordination systems, they say, we are of the Alpha Omega Order. You'll also find that in books like the Enoch books, of the Alpha and the Omega. When Thoth made deals with the Alpha Omega Order Wisadek Anunnaki hybrids, this is when the fire sword initiations began, which means this is when he allowed his hybrids, that he was put in charge of their evolution and getting them back into the Christos pattern. He allowed them, without asking them, he allowed them to begin receiving the frequencies transmissions of the flaming blue sword of Archangel Michael, that D13 reverse current that would begin the process of reversing their whole template. That began technically in 22,340 BC, right before the 326 BC, the 22,326 BC still activation cycle. That was the beginning of bringing fully into our race line the Metatronic distortion. Now, it began there. Enoch still held out. Enoch didn't defect from the Emerald Covenant until 10,500 BC in something that was called the Luciferian Conquest, where he basically felt cornered because the Anunnaki the Wisadeks had already taken over so much here that he joined with the Thoth groups. And they together agreed to take their sons of Belial and create something called the Sons of Zadok, from reversing Enoch's people, reversing their DNA templates, and then combining them to create a master race. And they weren't the only ones. You had draconian races trying to get in on the picture. It was like, who can snatch whose bodies and make a new race strain out of it? And it was all geared toward, originally they wanted to just get it done with in 22,326 BC. Stellar activation cycle, we get the place into reversal, suck it down in the Wisadek matrix, and that's that. Have our final conflict drama, because it's either going to go into Phantom or go into Wisadek. So those guys were fighting with each other. Which way is it going to go? Because we ended up in stalemate in 22,326 BC. We're still here to talk about it. But the history that has come since that point has been horrendous. After this time frame, after Thoth had gone over and began the I'm going to have to take this off. I'm getting really hot. Are you guys getting hot? Yeah. Yeah, you can open the door if you want. I think it's really hot in here. Okay. What are we doing on time?
Nice, give us 10 minutes.
How much?
10.
We have 10 minutes, okay. 8:45, okay. Ugh. Okay, anyway, Ma is still here. He's going to go into this. He's going to finish it. All right, I'm going to go through this quickly because I want to have time to... Do what? What? Stay 5 extra? Okay. Anyway. Okay. Now, this is where, I brought you up to the point where this fits in. This is what happened from Atlantis. All right? You see all those lines going down? They're different race lines. This has nothing to do with human evolution. This is the hybrid evolution of the Illuminati races. Okay? Yeah. It starts basically with several of the groups. Remember how we said we had the Enki, Enlil, and Marduk groups of the Pleiadian Nibiruans? Well, each of them created a strain by raiding the sons of Belial. All right? So it'll take me forever to try to read all of this. You had the Toth-Enki group. You had the Enlil group, which were Enlil Odedicron, so they were had more reptilian coding to them. You had the Marduk races, and these are called the Marduk Luciferians, and then you had the Marduk Satanes. This is where you get Lucifer and Satan. These were combined. They were family lines that combined with different things in the off-planet, in their home environments, and then took those gene codes and put them down into here, into the Leviathan races. So we ended up with a huge line of both Anunnaki. Oh, another one of them is the Samjaze Luciferian Anunnaki, which are the Pleiadian ones. So if you hear, it's funny, there's, I think, a person named Billy Meyer that's had contact with Samjaze the Pleiadian, and she comes down in her spaceship to visit. Well, guess where she lives? She lives in the Pleiades. She's one of these guys. These were the beginnings of the primary Atlantean king lines, the Leviathan or Illuminati king lines. There were also the Draxide, or the ones that were of the fallen Seraphim races. You had the Necromaton Andrami, which were ones that were one of the first combined with Wisadak, where you had the Andrami races that were they were Jehovian Anunnaki, and they combined with the Necromaton. And they combined with the Wisadaks to form the Necromaton. When you get into who combined with who and where'd you get Drak or where'd you get Anunnaki, it gets confusing, because there were a bunch of Wisadak races that were hybridized with, say, Omicron Draconian, and then that taken and hybridized with Anunnaki. The more codes you could collect, the better your master invader race would be. So we ended up with a group called the Necromaton Andrami ones, the Odedicron reptilian ones that kept pretty much the purest trained Odedicron ones. Some of them went bad as far as, even though they started out as a race that fell that didn't really mean to, some of them went into complete fall, where they began to make that choice to stay fallen. So there are reptilians that chose the fall at this point. There are also the Omicron Draconians, or the Dragon Moths. Okay? Now each of them created a whole line of beings that progressively evolved through time. There's on this side, when we get this chart done, there's like dates over here as to who became what when, and then it shows which branched off and which combined with what to create the next level. Yeah, the most important ones that I wanted to bring up here have to do with the basic Atlantean king lines. There were a group, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There were basically 5 groups that were involved with the Pleiadian Nibiruan crew. They were the Sathians, the Ilulcum, the Idiruans, the Lilithan, and the Azuriel. Various ones of them combined to form what became known as the Atlantean king lines. The Enlil Odedicron were the ones who were the Idiruans. They evolved to become the Nohasa Atalan king line. So you have an Atalan king line. You will also have, as we come down, an Atlas king line, an Osiris king line, a Larsa king line. And the Larsa kings, they found evidence and lists. The Larsa king lists were tablets that were found in Sumeria. So this stuff plugs right in to the archaeological evidence they managed to miss when they were doing their house cleaning in 9558 BC. Out of these lines, which it would probably take me another hour to try to go down and show you where everybody, comes out. When we get down to time period, Remus and Romulus are in here where Rome started. Now on this side, anyway, I'll just show you. In this section of the graph, okay, coming down, like straight down from this area over here toward the middle. Okay, would you please? Thank you. Over here you basically have the ones that were from the Toth lineage. And over here you have, in the middle, all right, over here you have more of the Toth lineage. Coming down this way you have ones that were the Enoch lineage. And then over here you have ones that were the Draconian ones, the Odedicron reptilian and the Draconian ones. So literally these created, every one of them created their Antichristos king lines, their Antichristos grail lines. And they came from Atlantis, and when we get up to certain points, there's certain interesting points in history here. Let me see. I wanted to get, where's Rome? 5,900 BC, that's before 700 BC, where is that? Okay, in here we basically have time periods such as, all right, the 9558 B flood. That was a contrived flood that was orchestrated by the members of the Luciferian Covenant. The Luciferian Covenant was run by all of these guys, the Tothian Anunnaki, the Pleiadian Nibiru and Anunnaki crew. And Enoch at that point had entered the Luciferian Covenant, which means he brought his race lines into the Metatronic coding, and it also meant he started to participate, and his races started to participate in the attempted hijack of the planet. Part of the Luciferian Covenant, which was originally founded in 10,500 BC, part of that was to stage a wipeout and a house cleaning, where once certain things were done to the memory banks here, in the planetary memory banks, once the Nibiru and diotic crystal grid thing that was set up at Stonehenge, once that was pumping enough of the program through the grids, there would be an erase time where we get rid of the history and the races, whatever races that they didn't particularly want. In 9558 BC was the period of time that they used the crystal generators, because at this point we still had Atlantean technology. You had massive selenite crystal rods that were positioned under the ocean beds in various regions connected to the stargates and those kind of things. And they used them to collapse part of the firmaments again. And this created, it wasn't the biggest flood that's ever been here. It wasn't the great deluge, but it was large enough to allow for, created a small amount of pole shift. That's where we got our wobble from. You know how the planet has its wobble. Well, that's where the wobble came from. It was already out of alignment from the other messes that had taken place before, but that was the last one. Now, in 9558 BC, there was spaceships flying all over the place, because the ones that they wanted to preserve were taken into shelter. Our guys knew it was coming and we couldn't stop it. So we literally got as many of the angelic humans into the inner earth as could come. And at that point, at least they had some DNA left to play with. You know, like right now, we're much more mutated in the DNA than we were at that point. The mutations had been started, but they hadn't been fully finished by then. So in 9558 BC, we had our house cleaning and our records cleaned out. Literally, the history records were taken, were destroyed, so we wouldn't have any reference. And progressively, the survivors after this point, there was still the knowledge. The Grail Line, the true Grail Line races and the angelic humans knew. They remembered what the history was. They knew the Atlantean history, and that was a problem, because there were genetic alterations through the fire sword initiations that were being done on the Leviathan races that made them progressively not be able to remember anything except the Metatronic programming. So it was like their radio bodies were being plugged in and fed the CD player or the CD, the CD-ROM program that was being run from the Metatronic Wisadek system. They were losing their memory. Their memory was being literally recoded right in their own DNA. But it wasn't affecting the angelic humans to that degree. They still remembered. They were still a problem. And they were going around teaching the Leviathan races, remembering them, helping them to wake up and remember. You don't want to do this. You really don't. This is why you don't remember. This is how it is. And a lot of the Leviathan races were coming back into the Emerald Covenant, which meant the fallen angelics were losing their foot soldiers. So there was a progressive series of things done from 9558 BC, the big one culminating in 3470 BC. Where is that? That's up here. Where there was a final shift in the magnetic fields on the planet that literally shut down everybody's DNA. It created a temporary, like if you shut your computer off and had to reboot, and when it rebooted, half of it was turned off. So literally, even the angelic humans lost their full memory banks at that point. They'd already taken the written records away in 9558 BC, and they got rid of monuments. They got rid of, literally, awesome buildings. There used to be beautiful Atlantean temples and those kind of things that are nothing like the pieces of stuff that are fallen down that we see now as ruins. These, I mean, really, there's something really been lost in the translation after the flood period as far as architecture. But that's because we haven't had the power of, say, the Ankhs and those kind of things. The Ankhs were a technology that was standard in Atlantis, and if we remember the Crux and Seda field that's formed with the Merkaba field. The Ankhs were tools that could actually generate small fields like that, so you could do all sorts of things with them. Once the flood had occurred and things were, basically the Anunnaki were taking over the planet again, those tools were taken in Earth and not allowed back out here because too much damage could be done with them. So we were back on manual, where you had to like lift blocks to move them, like with your hands instead of levitate them with a little handy little Ankh. So anyway, this whole progression, you have 9,558 BC flood, the 3,470 BC, 3,470 BC. We call that that was recorded in the Bible as the Tower of Babel thing, is the Babylon massacre, because we've been babbling on ever since. That's when they scrambled the languages. That's when we lost our cellular memory, and that's when they began to really amalgamate the races, where now angelic humans didn't remember anymore that they were different. Perfect place to get the Grail lines in, where they're clueless and we can direct them. So from this point on, we have been guided. We come up into more recent history. In through this period, now in through this period, from like, what are the dates on this? 700 and something. Actually, it starts around 1100 BC. We get into like the beginning formations of what became the Roman Empire and those kind of things. These were all invader empires. The Egyptian Empire was an invader empire. Pharaohs were not part of the Christic pattern. They were the Anunnaki raider races that came in here. We look and we go, oh, aren't they pretty temples and all this kind of stuff when we go over to Egypt and check out the stuff. If we knew the history on them, we wouldn't be so impressed. They're evidence, living evidence of the invasion of this planet by Anunnaki races. So in through this section we have where the Roman culture began, when the natural people, the Stargate 5 people, that were the original Greek and Roman, peoples, were invaded, and progressively transposition of race identity was done to them. They were either killed if they wouldn't cooperate, and they were hybridized to progressively infiltrate the Leviathan gene code into their stock, into their genetic stock. This happened literally at different times within every culture on this planet. It was planned and it was orchestrated. And right now, what's on the planet is the product of this. We have the creation of Rome. Down here we get into fun stuff, where we get into like the Jesus story. And we find out that Abraham's line came through from this section over here. It was when some of the Toth group, some of the sons of Belial and the sons of Zadok combined down here to create what's called the Hyksos. The Hyksos kings, they're also in our written history. They don't know much about them, but the Hyksos they ended up doing a transposition of race identity on the Hebrew lines and also in various other ones. But Abraham was one of those. So all of the descendants of Abraham were originally Hyksos. Abraham had nothing to do with the Hebrew peoples. The tribes that are listed in the Bible right now have nothing to do with the angelic human history. We've literally had an alien race come in here and transpose over our history records and our identity, mess with our DNA, wipe out our memory via the planetary magnetic fields, and literally make us think that we're their children. Our history was very different than this. So this chart is interesting because it shows you all sorts of things. It shows you the invasion, how the various cultures were invaded and hybridized, and their gene code progressively diluted and turned into reversal through forced hybridization with these raider races. It happened to the Celts. It happened to everybody at different times. The Hindus got it in 5,900 BC. I mean, it was just like, if you look, once this chart is done, it's going to be really phenomenal. But this is what got us up to the present moment and the present predicament that we're in. How long do we have before? We don't really have time. Okay, because we're going to have time, because I was saying, yeah, keep going, all right. What do we do? Are we on bus? Are we on bus? Yes, okay. Here in Greece, we've experienced various energies here in Greece. But there's one energy that stands out, at least in my mind. And just from watching the faces and feeling the vibrations of people, it seems that it has stood out for you also. That was our journey to Paxos. Is there anybody that feels there was a place that had more high or spiritual energy than Paxos in our trip? Nope. Right. All right. There's a reason for this. And this reason goes for people, no matter what their belief system is, no matter what path of Genesis they are going to be on. There's a vibrational difference that was felt here. And we were actually treated to the lows and the highs of things, let's say. There are certain places that were very baseline. If you put them in tones with voice, you would have very low tones and very high tones, with Paxos as the high notes. You know, beyond soprano would be up there. This was allowed and orchestrated, not by us down here, for a reason. So we began to be sensitive to the differences. The things that we teach may sound foreign to some ears that have been used to hearing other things from other places. But there's a vibration that goes beyond words, that goes beyond books or teachings, no matter how old they are. It's a vibration of truth and freedom that rings in certain places and does not ring in others, because that vibration has been taken away. On Paxos Island, Paxos was very special because in the Atlantean period, it was the place where all the Magi Grailines, the angelic humans and the indigos, when they were fleeing, they were in constant state of exodus, and we have been since Atlantis. Constant state of exodus, away from the Leviathan races who were insistent upon dominating or destroying our race line here. Paxos was a place that was agreed upon, and I didn't know this until now. This is coming through live, and it's coming through from a level of my consciousness that calls itself Azara, which is its frequency resonance pattern, as Ashana is mine down here. From the Azara level, we know that there are certain places, very few on this planet, but those few have been highly protected, where the planetary grids, regardless of who tried to invade them, there was a buffer zone put up, because there was an open link to the Eka. If you remember, that's the inner path, all right, in the maps. That's that inner world, the first level of the lower God worlds. In our Vecca matrix is the Eka. But that inner space goes up all the way through all of the highest God worlds. There are certain places on this planet that have anchored that, regardless of who tried to take over or did what to the grids. Almost an aggressive stance by the Iani races and by the founders. Like, all right, you can mess with things, but certain things you're not going to touch. Paxos Island is one of them. The regions here, because of what has been and still is awakened alive of Paxos. The other places like Corfu are touched by, let's say, the grace that exists there. There are open portals to inner earth and to the Eka there. What we've done today, what the activity in our singing, why, it was really funny because I think we were driving the tour guides mad. Yes, they pull up to caves. No, not that one. Keep going. Where? I don't know. Keep going. It's over that way, right? This is how we found the places. What I didn't know, Az didn't know, Mac didn't know, the speakers did not know because the Iani hadn't told us. And we're getting used to this, that there's always a surprise mission beneath the original mission. The surprise mission today was we activated something called the Signet Shields. Now, anybody who's read the Amente books and followed the work understands that when the CDD plates were given, those little silver metallic discs that held the memory records of this planet and this time matrix, when they were given in 246,000 BC, there was also a set of shields given. Now, these shields were more than just scalar shields, which are invisible things that we don't see in tangible terms. These were physical 3D objects that worked with the CDD plates. The CDD plates were the activators. The shields allowed the angelic human races and the indigo races to manually activate stargates. The shields would be used at the Q sites, activate the Q site, and the Q site activates the gate site. What we did today was there are 2 shields that were hidden here. Usually the shields were kept at their gate site. There are 12 shields like there are 12 gates. They're either kept at the gate or they're kept at the Q site. Usually they'd be kept at the gate site. So in case they fell into wrong hands, they wouldn't be used right on site. They'd have to figure out where the gate was, where the Q site was to activate the gate. But because there was so much interference in the Ionian Islands, the set of CDD plate and shield that goes with the number 5 Stargate and Q site, with the Q site number 5 being with Rome. Because there was so much infiltration of the Draconian force there, it was taken and it was hidden in Paxos. Now Paxos is Q site 7. It was also the place where Shield 7 existed. Today, with our songs, why we had to drive the tour guides crazy and to say, no, keep going, it's not this cave, no, another cave. And then we found the places deep underground, deep underwater. These caves continue. There are not just caves on surface, they go deep down under. There are 2 metal discs that are keyed to the CDD plates and keyed to the Stargates and Q sites, number 7 and number 5. In our songs, in the Song of Kemalata'i, there are the frequency codes that activate those plates. Those shields will activate now because of what we've done. What this means is these particular grids over in this area, which are very important to the whole of the planetary grids, will be able to anchor the 12 Ruche pillars. In other words, when those pillar frequencies start coming in here, because of what we did, they won't blast their way through and blow holes in things. They will simply settle in nicely because we set the grounding base for them. So we did a very sacred and special thing. And it would have been, we were hoping to have everyone on one boat. We would have done this meditation there on one boat. But because there were 2, it would have broken up the energies too much. It still worked out very well. But now we are going to go on a journey. This is the beginning of a teaching. We've done a few of these before in the last 3 years, here and there, where the atmosphere and the, let's say, participants were appropriate for it. We are going to do a brief meditation of taking the mental body, the spiritual body, and the emotional body into a place called the Halls of Amenti. The Halls of Amenti are the bypass zones that will allow, even though they're damaged, the planetary stargates and portals here to open, to allow those of us who have prepared our bodies to be able to pass into the first stage of Ascended Master Grade, which is going into the lower God worlds of the Eka, the inner earth path. This is a path of evolution that's different than the Vekas. It's freer. It's more expansive. Time stretches out. It's the closest I can describe as to what living within the Eka frequencies is like. Is compare Paxos and the feeling of the energy there to some of the other places we moved through here, or to other places that you're familiar with at home, like New York City, or places that you can feel the congestion and blocking of energy. It's always hectic, it's always push, it's always too much stuff, not enough time, not enough this, not enough that. It's not like that in the Eka time zones. Bodies work different there too. We're preparing our bodies and our consciousness to make the shift. Whether or not we take our bodies, we have an opportunity to reincarnate into those cycles now and leave the Veka worlds behind. It is an unprecedented leap. A leap from the lower of the 7 heavens in the Veka worlds into the first level of the God worlds. Usually, you have to pass all the way up through vertically until you get to the higher Vekas, where you're out of manifestation form. Then you have an opportunity to begin incarnation into the inner Veka worlds. But because of the circumstance that surrounds our history here, and because of certain, actually, you could say, manifestations of divine luck that occurred, windows of opportunity, that even within what could be perceived as the most sad case scenario has opened other that are the most high case scenario. We have an opportunity to get the heck out of here without spending another 20 cycles or so. Be we taking our bodies or just our consciousness, it doesn't matter. If it comes down to picking one, leave the baggage. If the body is too damaged to go and there's not enough time, don't care. However, we can take the bodies. It's a lot of work. It's not always worth it. Because you get over there and say, oh, shucks, I could have incarnated it into one of those where I don't have to fix all this stuff. Yes. Now, just for the record, even though we have an attitude of, yes, you can leave your bodies, get rid of the thing you have if you don't want it. If you don't want to take it with you, if you want to try a new one, you can do this. Don't ever, ever mistake that for twisted things, such as what happened with Heaven's Gate in the United States. The Heaven's Gate crew were hijacked, technically speaking. They were told that they could be picked up by spaceships in consciousness once they killed their bodies. We don't and will never endorse suicide, because suicide means the ego is taking control of the situation and not allowing the soul and the oversoul and the avatar and the rishi to guide it at what's most best. You do not need to take your own life nor make that decision. If it is time for you to leave, and it is best for you to leave without your body, your avatar level will make that decision, and something natural will occur or an accident will occur. So don't ever mistake what we teach, even though we're not afraid of death and we teach you there are freedoms associated with death. That does not mean to take it into your own hands on an egotistical level on D3 and decide, I'm going to dump my body. Because right now your bodies are your vehicles to get your consciousness to its highest level. If you activate the DNA and work with these codes, you will be able to boost your consciousness. So when you leave the body, if you don't take it with you, when you leave it, it will go into a space that can reach incarnation into the God worlds, as opposed to if you leave it, dump it, before you activate it high enough. At that point, you might get stuck back in the cycles in the Vekas, which is okay. You might get stuck in the Wisadek, which is okay for about 2 billion years. And after that, you will go back to space dust and you will return to source. But you will not remember. Remembering is precious. It's part of co-creation and sovereignty. That's the path we teach. So now, enough of talk. Let us begin by taking a slow, deep breath. Become aware for a moment of the rhythm of your breathing as it goes normally. Observe how it goes in and out on its natural flow. And then make a conscious effort to cut that in about half, where you slow it by half. You make it slow down by half. This will help you to rapidly enter what's called alpha brainwave state. The alpha state allows you to connect with your molecular structure. So you don't just disassociate from the body, you can go elsewhere. You take a portion of the cellular memory with you. Now, feel for a moment the energies of the ocean that are near you, behind you for most of you. Feel this energy, because there's a very special energy. Interesting that they just kick up the music. So I will speak louder. Actually, it might be interesting to listen as we go along on our journey for little pieces of waking dream messages that get sent in the lyrics. Okay, I get it. Oh. Now, imagine for a moment ourselves back in the cave. Remember the cave where we sang the Kimalatai song? It was the particular cave where the two boats came together. You know, they came into the cave together. The water was azurite blue with turquoise highlights. There was an opening over to one side and a dome over our heads. This is a portal site. It's a portal that will do nothing for those who don't have the keys. We have the keys, and the keys are codes. Now imagine for a moment that we're back on the boats over there. Imagine the lumpy of the water. Remember how it was making the boats just move a little bit and sway. Try to put yourself back there. If we were all in one boat, we would have done this there, but it would have been more disruptive with the two boats than to do it here. Now, imagine that on the boat where you were positioned when we were there, that you are levitating. Just imagine there's a little cushion, like a hydrofoil boat, underneath you. There's a little cushion of energy. And wherever you were sitting on the boat you were on, imagine there's a little cushion that just lifted you up a bit. You kind of get a kick out of the feeling of the fuzziness under your bum, because there's fuzziness there. It's important to get in touch just with the imagination of this fuzziness under your bottom when you are sitting on the boat. Because in a moment, we are going to make the boat go away. Because the boat is not the vessel that will take us through to the inner worlds. It is good to keep the eyes closed for this exercise, just to be able to focus more clearly. I see a few people with eyes open. If you can put yourself back in memory, you get less distracted by the things around you if you have your eyes closed. Now imagine that instead of the boats that were there, imagine we are all there singing our song of Kamilatai, but we are all levitating about halfway up between the water and the dome of rock on top. We are all sitting on little cushions of fuzzy energy that look like donuts. Donuts of energy, pale silver energy. Try to get a feeling of us being there. Little donuts of energy. We're floating above the water, looking at the beautiful azurite water below us, feeling the echo of our songs off the domed rock walls. Try to feel the reality of that experience. Imagine that you have a ghost body, a two-dimensional body that would seem two-dimensional to you, that is like an image of electricity that you can move out of yourself into other places. You do have this body, it's the astral body. Let it take on the shape that your body is now, and let it ride on that cushion within the cave that we were in. Try to hold a focus of consciousness within both places. You're in your physical body, but you're also in your electric body, your ghost body, your D4 astral body, hanging out on a cushion of frequency that's within the cave. If you can retain both focuses, it takes a practice sometimes to do this, but to retain your focus, okay, I'm here, and okay, I'm also there. You can put a piece of your consciousness in each place. This is the beginning of learning to take your body through. Holding bifocus. It's a bivector focus. You're focusing in more than one time vector at once. This is the beginning of bilocation. Bilocation is the beginning of being able to take your body with you. First, you need to take your mind, your spirit, and your emotions with you, your sensory apparatus with you. This is what we are going to do now. Now imagine that the part of ourselves that are sitting in the ghost bodies on the little donuts of energy, hovering about, singing our Kamilatai song within the cave that we are in today. Imagine now that the little donut of energy sends up a force field bubble in the shape of the Akasha. We're sitting in a little teardrop-shaped bubble of energy now. This is our protection field. This is our Merkaba field, the part of it that will most closely be around our bodies. Around that, we'll have the Akasha Merkaba shape. But just focus on the teardrop shape that we're sitting inside of, like we're inside a cosmic teardrop. That teardrop is a vessel that can travel anywhere. So we're going to go down through water. Remember, and look down for a moment from that body of your memory, of your electrical D4 self that's hanging out, looking downward at the azurite-colored water. Imagine you're back in that cave. Relax your breath. Slow the molecular body here down a little bit. Consciously slow. Now we're going to drop our cosmic teardrop bubbles through the water. We're going to go into the deep blue azurite water. And we're going to go as if we were rain falling from within the cave. Try to feel the sensation of gently falling down, knowing you're safe and suspended within the Akasha bubble. You were hovering in the air before, now you're getting closer to the water. And now you're feeling the water come up near you. And now your bubble, your teardrop that you're inside of, it's like your little space bubble, your little spaceship, your little aqua bubble that can travel underwater. It's now going to go down into the water. Try to see out of the eyes of the astral body that is traveling this way. Try to see what that deep blue azurite water, clear blue but deep, looks like from inside, as if you were under it. But you're not wet, you're not cold, and there's nothing that can harm you because you're in your cosmic teardrop akasha. Feel the movement of moving downward and downward, as if there's a spiral of vortex of sacred waters that spiral way, way down, way underneath that cave, where there is such a thing. And we will all move down through this spiral of water into a very, very special place. Try to feel your body here with the akasha around it, and let it feel the sensations of moving down through the water as if you were in an aqua bubble. You're in an aqua bubble moving down, and you begin to feel a current that's starting to move you around in a circle. So you're like a teardrop that's moving around in a vortex. And the vortex is going downward as if you were going down the drain, down the drain. But at the end of the drain, there's a very special place, a very sacred place that you don't have to be afraid of. So you can let loose and relax as you go down the drain, knowing you'll be safe when you land. Try to feel the spiraling. The spiraling will first go clockwise. Feel the clockwise spiraling. If you're feeling counterclockwise spiraling, you're getting caught in a cross current. So try to correct it so you'll get your teardrop in the right vein. So we can all go together. It will take you somewhere else counterclockwise. Not necessarily negative, but just somewhere else. We wouldn't want to lose you on the journey. All right, now we're going to spiral downward, clockwise. And eventually we'll begin to feel as if a tunnel of water with walls is beginning to move in and close in around us, as if our akasha bubble is being squished just a little bit, where it's not the full pudgy little teardrop that it was. It's becoming a long, thin teardrop because it's going through a tunnel, a cavern, a crystal cavern underwater. Try to feel it around your shoulders, as if something's pressing in on your akasha, and that's pressing in on your shoulders. So you almost feel like you want to squeeze your shoulders in to make yourself smaller to fit. Just for a moment or two. And then at the end of the squeeze, there's a release, where your akasha goes poof, and it pops back into its rounded bottom form, where it has the nice akasha shape, where it has a rounded bottom, not a skinny little one. Try to notice now, with your inner vision, that before, as you saw beautiful crystal, azurite blue and turquoise waters flow by your vision outside your akasha bubble, the waters are gone. You've moved through a tube. The tube that you moved through with the little squish feeling is a small bridge zone, let us say. It is like a pipeline bridge that takes from the water bases of Earth into the portal zones that lead to inner Earth. Look for a moment as if you're inside a crystalline akasha bubble. Just try to see with your astral eyes outside of it. It will be dark and fuzzy at first, but you will see areas of light. And just like an infant coming into the world, those areas of light will take on form. If you really look at them, you'll be able to begin to see forms. You will see certain things that look like tunnels or more caves to go down, and other areas that look like cracks within the rock, large cracks that you could move your akasha through that have this bright light shining from them. We are going to follow the path of one of those cracks. Now, everything we do is a mathematical encoding. Every image that we give you is a symbol, a living symbol of a place that exists, that you can perceive eventually as three-dimensional space once you get your whole body oriented to that angular rotation part of the figure. So now imagine we're in our akasha bubbles and we're not in water anymore, we're floating. There's water a bit below us and it seems very dark, as if it's black waters. Not bad, very neutral vibration, but black. We're not going to go down into the black waters. We're instead going to go toward the one largest crack in the rocks of this inner cavern cave, where bright, bright light, pale gold, pale yellow, pale silver, and pale white all mixed together. They are calling us home. We'll follow this light frequency. Imagine we are now traveling as if we had little gear controls to steer. Imagine a gear panel in front of you where you're going to drive your Akasha bubble. Now there'll be a time when simply thought alone will do this. We give it a command, turn left, turn right, and we'll do it. But because we are three-dimensional and used to using our hands, it would be good to imagine your astral hands reaching out and touching a control panel. And through the fingertips, the instructions of the mind will come out the fingertips and communicate with this panel. And it will drive this Akasha vehicle for you. As you drive the Akasha vehicle, move it toward the light. Give the intention toward that brightest light. Try to feel the reality of your Akasha vehicle moving. Try to feel yourself in this wonderful, bouncy little bubble of energy, tear-shaped bubble of energy that will take you through this very skinny-looking crack in the wall of this great cavern that had been beneath the waters. We'll all squeeze a bit, and again, our Akashas will get a little bit skinny and squashed as if we're fitting through a little crevice. This forward is where we need to go. There'll be a certain point when you pop through this conduit, this frequency path. There will be a release, and again, your Akasha will pop back into its rounded bottom form. Akashas have round bottoms. They are not spheres, they are bubbles that have a connection to source that gives them the teardrop shape. Now, in the new place we are in a place that physically exists, where many, many races converge in loving harmony. It is a place about 2,500 years in the future from where we are positioned now. As our Akashas, our little Akasha traveling machines, pop up, we will find ourselves very rapidly passing from this squeezing little tube into what it feels like on the outside of our Akasha, water. Again, we're in water, but it's a really quick, like a cork popping up out of water. And our Akasha pops up, and suddenly it's floating on water, bobbing around as if it was a buoy, as if it was one of those little markers that tell you where you can swim and can't. Bopping around with the waves, gentle waves on the water. These now are the waters of what is called inner earth. These waters exist within a very sacred pond. It's a saltwater pond that is connected to these waters through these interior caverns that exist. We touch the outside rims of one of those caverns today. This cavern goes down, and it does, when you modulate frequency, shift into the waters that come up into Crystal Pylon Temple Site 7, which connects to Inner Earth Stargate 7. In our journey, we have brought our Akashas up, and they're bobbing around like little floating teardrops upon the waters that look very, very similar to this, particularly how they looked around Paxos, where the clouds hung low over the mountains and the sun shone behind them, and there were blues and purples and soft muted indigo grays as the light of the high day began to shift. We are in a place now, a place that we will come to many times. It is a greeting port, let us say, of Inner Earth Stargate 7. This will be a primary port because it has been held in security, and its connection point in Earth has been held in security for over 200,000 years. It will be a place that no matter what takes place on this planet will never ever be compromised. There are 22 other sites that qualify in the same vein. But progressively, when it becomes time and when they activate and when we can allow you to use them, we will give you the information on them. But right now, feel yourself as a little bobbing teardrop of energy with you inside. And you're going to be greeted now. There's a greeting team assembling on the shores of this beautiful, beautiful waters. The waters actually have come up within another cave, but this cave is unlike any you have seen here. This cave does not have rock as you know it, rock with dark colors or thick substance. These are crystal caverns made of selenite, pure, organic, homegrown, grows on its own, divine selenite. They are pure, radiant, translucent white. They can run the colors of the rainbow. Try to feel yourself now as your little bubble Akasha moves toward the shore of this area, and the shore is crystalline sand that almost looks translucent white. You'll be able to get out of your Akasha now and internalize it, bring it into your heart chakra. You're taking it from outside of you and going and pulling it into the heart chakra. You keep it inside. You only push it outside when you need to move through things. When it's inside of you, it's just always running divine current. But when it's outside of you, you also have a replica inside. But when you push it outside, it creates the replica of divine current around you. So you have a field around you that can move through things, move through places that angels fear to tread. Move through God worlds where angels alone cannot reach. Imagine yourself here now, and you're getting out on the crystalline shore. And imagine that there are a group of 12 beings that are going to meet you. 12 very beautiful beings. 6 are male, 6 are female. All are tall. The shortest is 6'5". The tallest is 12'10". Quite a difference in height. These are our greeting committee, and we will begin to know them through the contact course. But right now, they are simply here to greet us and to give us a frequency exchange that will help us anchor to this place. This is a bay. It is known as the Bay of Loving Mercy. One of the easiest portals to pass to go to this earth. This is a place where if you work with this visualization, imagine the sacred beach within a sacred cavern made of crystalline selenite. Selenite is clear like quartz, but it runs in rods where you have a linear quality to it as opposed to just the clear shape of quartz. Try to picture this area because you can go back here. This will be the point of meeting, your first port, your home port, when you go into inner earth. You can use this visualization and this vision. All you have to remember, you do not have to remember how to get there. Remember 2 things, Akasha, around you and in you. You are traveling there in your Akasha bubble. And remember what you have perceived as the images, or the feelings, if you haven't got pictures, the feelings of the images of the crystalline cavern and the sea of loving mercy that you just popped up in. That image or that feeling of the image of this place is what's called a crux code. Crux referring to Crux Anseda, standing Akasha Merkaba fields. That image is a mathematical code. If you don't have the image, that's all right. Try to feel the space. That feeling is the feeling translation of the same mathematical code. It is a coordinate point. It is a point and a map. It is a point that you can work with to get there again. And you will find one of the 12 will come to you. Of the 12, they know all of us. They are the masters of the inner Eka worlds. And they are aware of all of us, of the rosters, of who is on this planet at this time. So they know anyone who comes to this gate. And the ones who know you most, who have, let's say, history with you, will be the one to approach you. You can use this tonight, and they will come to you. You can use this at any time. And if at any time you find yourself in danger, or feeling like you might be, move yourself here instantly. Work with this visualization, simply of the Akasha around you, and this crystalline place with the 12 standing there, greeting you. A beautiful bay like the bay we've seen here in Paxos and in Corfu, same color water, but it's inside of a gorgeous crystal cavern. This is a mathematical code that if you can work to bring that visualization clear, at first it might be a sense or a feeling or I could probably try to imagine that. Try. If you don't have it yet, try. Because you will find the mathematical code. And it is a place that you can shift reality here from. if there is something that is not really good for you to happen, and you go to this place, you can work with immediately your crystal self. Come in, and it will help you to shift whatever's happening on the outside. In the next 12 years on this planet, that may become very, very useful. This is only the beginning of the visitations and the voyages. But you will be able to progressively learn how to go and how to go deeper and how to go further. Once you're in there, there's multitudes of universes to explore. But we'll start simple. We'll start at the meeting point so we can find our way in the tour. This has been a long-awaited moment for our entry to this place. You can leave a part of yourself there now if you would like, so we can go talk to those. And those who have greeted you are the Ioni, those of the Ascended Masters, the true Ascended Masters, those of the Unisai, the point of all oneness, the true point of all oneness. Leave a part of yourself there. Collect it tonight. Afterwards, after dinner, after you go to your room, it's time to sleep. Try to remember for a moment, a part of you still there. You can leave it there for 10 days if you want to, but you will get more from the experience if you remember to recall it, because that part of your energy will bring part of the knowing that that part of you is learning. You will leave a part there, and you will begin to be taught things and shown things. You will begin to be shown the part of you that has always existed in inner earth, that's connected to those grids just like they are here. Remember to recall yourself tonight and ask that part of you that went on the journey to come back and communicate with you. And it will first be in a dream. Now, because there are time limits in the world in which we live here, in the worlds in which you live, we must wrap this up quickly. There will be other things, much other things. We've learned a lot on this trip. We've touched on things that make many more questions than there are answers right now. The time for the answers will progressively come. We give as much into this time frame as frequency allows, but there is so much information between one moment of our time in the inner vectors and the squeezed tight little moments that you call moments here. It takes us 3 days to get through 5 minutes. 5 minutes of talk in our world takes 3 days in your world. It is like that. Now, we will return you back. Imagine yourself leaving that part of you there, and very rapidly, the other part of you that wants to go to dinner here is going to put itself back in its Akasha vehicle. Your Akasha vehicle was like a ship that was waiting upon this beautiful sea in the inner earth. Put yourself back in there, as if it were a ship you're climbing upon, but you're going in. And very quickly, poof, you're going to pop yourself back up through all the caverns you went through to get there. And you're going to be bobbing up and down again in the cave we were in today. Try to remember this cave. And those of you who have taken pictures inside of that cave, if you could share them with the others. These pictures work as importantly as do the symbol codes we give you. They are mathematical programs of an exact coordinate that corresponds to inner earth. So if you would share with each other the pictures that have been taken and use those photographs for projection, you will all learn how to get here much easier and much faster. Bring the part of you that's hungry back, and the part of you that's hungry for other things like soul knowledge. Let them go traveling. You'll come back now. And try for a moment as you come back. Open your eyes, but look out across the sea. See the color that is there. These are the colors of the twilights as they come upon the crystal temples and inner earth as well. This is one of the places on the planet that is as close to what it looks like in some of the inner earth spaces as you will get. There will be a time when those of you who stick with things move off into, say, a boat ride, but there will be an energy fence, and you will feel a little pop as you move through, and all of a sudden, you'll still be in the water in your boat, but you've turned your boat into a Merkaba. It still looks like a boat to you, but you are in new lands. This is how it will look when you come through. You may walk through, you may fly through, or you may go through. This is how it will look. It will look as if you take a boat out there, hop. All of a sudden, you're still out there, but out there changed into somewhere else where it's connected to in the God worlds. So we will let you go for now because of the time. Now, let me shift for a moment. I go up, she fully orients back here. We ground our energies and become Ashana again. This is Azara, by the way. It is Ashana on the Ascended Master level. And the accent she busts me is Transylvanian as far as Ashana is concerned, but it truly isn't. It is Ioni, actually, as translated through very rapidly through the patterns of a D3 person in your time frame that speaks English. So I will say goodbye and allow Ashana space to come through. She's here with us, but I will shift this space out where you notice the language changing. This is not channeling. Do not ever think that it is. You can do this. I'll have a higher space like this. And when you begin to bring it through, you'll have funny accents too. Some of you may speak languages that the rest of you are going, what am I saying? But you know. All right. So anyway, we need to move quickly in order to accommodate the constraints that are of time here. Now, I will shift.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As always. Thank all of you. Now, all right. I'm back. All right. What's the time? How are we doing?
We're late.
We're late. Okay. Should we come back afterwards to wrap up? Because there were several points.
It's every time we sit down to do 15 minutes, it ends up to be 2 hours. I've noticed this. There are just a few points that I think that I originally had outlined to touch upon or recap before we wrap this up. This is the end of our Ionian journey, and it's been a wonderful experience from our perspective. If any of you have been to Peru with us, you'll know what we mean. Peru or Egypt, perhaps. These trips were like we coined the phrase Azurite boot camp because they were just brutal. Every button you have will be pushed. Every time you have an issue about clock time, it will blow up in your face. Every time you have an issue about somebody pushing energy at you, they'll do it more. I mean, these are what these other trips were kind of like in a lot of ways. The Peru trip was very strenuous physically for the people who participated. This one has been very easy comparatively. We've seen beautiful blue-green oceans. We've seen amazing places. We've learned some interesting things about gods of ancient times and some interesting things about ourselves and about the times we're in right now. The information we're learning now is coded to D6 to D9 level of frequency, just so you know. The average person out there bopping around on average strand 3.5 activation couldn't care less, can't hold it, doesn't want to know it, is terrified by it, or is completely oblivious to this information. The fact that you were guided to be in a place like this has something to do with what you're carrying in your DNA. It's saying that you're at a certain level of activation where this information would even appear in your hologram, regardless of who the messengers delivering it are. We commend you for where you are, because all of you are much further along than you realize, or you wouldn't be here. This information wasn't due for release for a very long time. Some parts of it weren't due for release for 500 years if things had gone in a peaceful, slow, evolutionary way. But they haven't, and we really have the Anunnaki races to thank for that. It may be a thank you, because we could be living for the next 500 years to 1,000 years in the same muddled place that this place has been for the last 25,000 years, where there's wars, and there's this and there's that, and you think it's one thing, but it's actually another, where you're worshiping things outside of yourself because you forgot that there was something inside of yourself that you were directly connected to God with. We could have gone on like that for another 1,000 years. So there is a mercy, actually, in the times that are upon us now. There's a separation that's occurring with people that will be going in their chosen directions. There has never been an obligation to go in the direction that we teach. We respect people regardless of what path they choose. There's one beautiful thing about Source, because all of us are one, and every face, be it a fallen angelic or the most high angelic, are all Source. The fallen ones are the ones who forgot they were, and they can create amazingly destructive holograms. But the thing about Source is, it will always renew itself and restore itself. It will restore itself in wholeness, where the pieces of itself that went away and came back, from into the hologram and out, where they remember, and then they can chatter when they get home about all their wonderful experiences and say, what am I going to do next? And there are the ones that will come back in another way. They will come back as little units of consciousness, the way Source originally created the first creation. Either way, you can't escape Source. You can't escape God. We are in God. God is in us. We are God. We are made of the particles, the units of the consciousness of God. So, when we look at the times that are before us, we may be moving into, in fact we are, moving into a period of time that's going to hold some rather, two things. One thing will be frustratingly slow shifts, where you know darn well it's going to a certain direction, like get on with it already. Like it's going to go to war between certain countries, but they'll do this and they'll do that, and they'll do this, and there's a hype, and then it goes down again, and there's another hype, and then it goes down again, and then bang, and then it'll blow up. It's almost like shoot the horse already. Really, it's wreathing on the ground, where there's a part of us that will feel very just sick and tired of the whole thing, agitated. If there's something bad going to happen, get it over with already, so I can get on with my existence. I'll deal with it after the fact. That would be the super easy way. If we were having like Wormwood come in and just we know in 3 months' time we're going to go into complete pole shift and most of the population is going to be wiped out. That would be the easy way. It really would. You say, oh great, we have three months to party. We don't have to worry about anything anymore. Run our credit cards up, do the whole thing. That's not the way it's going to go. It's going to be piece by piece. Pieces separate, some go up, some go lower, and eventually they will move completely apart where they're no longer a part of the same hologram. And in the meantime, we're going to see muck. It's like stirring up crystal clear waters that have a lot of sediment at the bottom. We're going to see a lot of sediment flying in the next 2 years, 3 years, 10 years. There's peace in this process if we realize that the process, regardless of how outwardly horrendous it might seem at times, or how outwardly non-moving it might seem at times, it's like you sit there and watch it, and it's the same picture you saw 30 years ago. It's like, is it ever going to change? Someday. And the day is coming. The peace comes from realizing we're part of a change that has been so long awaited, we can't even count that long anymore. I mean, it's billions of years that this whole healing experiment that was called the Phantom Matrix was allowed to exist. It has grown and expanded and taken twists and turns that nobody foresaw or expected or anticipated. All of us from every side have learned huge amounts of things. But we are in a process now of the regenesis of races. The people on this planet will not all become the same race of beings, and they will not all be in the same reality field anymore by the time these transitions are done. So it's a time to celebrate what is here, right now, while it's stable, while it's peaceful, while those illusions still hang before us. There are people that we can love that might not want to hear about this work at all, and that's okay. Enjoy them. Trust their spirits to put them where they need to be, and if it's different than where your spirit feels it needs to be, respect both of you. Don't let yourself get suckered into things just because they're commonplace, to programs of ideas or beliefs, just because somebody else told you that's the way they were for the last 25,000 years. It doesn't mean they were the truth. The one thing about this paradigm that we teach that is different from what all of the others teach is we teach you that your connection to God is directly within you. We teach you the mechanics of your body that help you to bring that into fruition. That's the difference. That's the difference between freedom and having somebody else control your evolution. The choice is always yours. But it is a time to walk by flowers and take the time for a moment to wonder who they are. Because they may be flowers that won't grow in the places of the high spaces. They may be flowers that come from the low spaces, but they may be beautiful anyway. Just because things are from the Wysadek matrix, they have created some beautiful things. Even through the Antichristos pattern, beauty has been created. That shows you the strength of the true beauty that all creation has been originally seated upon. When we move into the times that we're moving into, if we're in a country where war comes, we can do what the neighbors do and freak out. We can watch the TV and be glued to the TV when it tells us what to do next. And when the government tells us to go sign up down at the local post office to make sure they know where everybody is right before they put martial law down. Those things happen. You can follow the herd. You'll find lots of people there. You'll find company. Or you can remember that there are places you can get to, and if you're going to get your body there, you got to get your mind and your emotions there first. Your spirit's already there. You just got to meet it. I hope that the one thing that you might have received from this workshop, if nothing else, is an understanding that whatever comes up in the next couple of months or weeks or years, you have within you the power, the knowledge, the things that we have access to, as and I and Mac, we're speakers right now. You have access to this too. It comes from inside. Sometimes your own spirit will test you, and it'll rip away everything on the outside. You have nothing that you want, nothing that means anything anymore. You lose your job, your spouse, your house. I mean, you can, if it takes that for your spirit to get your attention, oftentimes it will do that. You don't have to go through all that if you just recognize it to begin with and say, okay, Spirit, I'm willing to give you all of this stuff, to surrender all of this stuff to my true spiritual path, whatever that is. I'll surrender any of it because it's all just holograms. These things are thought forms. This whole world we see with our outer senses is a thought form hologram. Very real when you're in it. What's more important, the illusion or God? God as it moves through you, as it speaks through you, as it feels through you. As long as you know that lesson, you don't have to learn it again. Which means, if you embrace that first, you will find a lot less testing ground in your own personal life. If you're willing to give up any physical stuff you have, it might be your spouse, it might be your house, it might be your country, it might be your planet. If your spiritual connection to God is the most important thing, and you know when you trust that God, you will know that whatever you get out of these smaller things, that if you allow you and God to work together as one, you can create hugely better things. You think, this is good? Just wait to see what you can create. But if you decide to create and not co-create with God, that's when you find out how limited your holograms can be. This world is learning about the limitations of its ego and its hologram. You can make a choice now that's different. You can choose. There are 3 paths, basically, that exist. Doesn't matter what religion you adopt. They're going to lead you to one of 3 paths. One is the path of freedom. It's the path of true ascension. It's the path of eternal life. It's the path of the founders and the God worlds, where you know the secrets of the universe, because you remember you were created as a guardian race that was supposed to know that. Or you can have the path of the Weesadex, where externalized creator gods will control your destiny for you for about 2 billion years of evolution. And you can worship them and sacrifice things to them and praise them and pray to them to fix your life for the next 2 billion years. If that makes you happy, all power to you. Hopefully, if you choose that path, you can at least respect others who don't. That usually doesn't come with that package, though. Unfortunately, usually judgment, harsh judgment does. But that's their issue. The people who choose the path of freedom don't have to let that bother you anymore. You need to ask yourself, whose problem is this? They're judging me. They think I'm horrible because I have these weird ideas compared to theirs. Well, think about the ideas they're holding. Who's weird here? I mean, fine, I'm weird to you. Well, you're pretty weird to me, too. Right? But at least I have some manners and I can love you anyway. You know, you can learn to say, well, that's your problem. I love you anyway. Since that's an issue between us, I'm not even going to touch that. I'm not going to put any energy there. It's not going to get fixed. I'll just let you be who you are. You can still interact with people who are in that space, unless they're really aggressive about it. Then you just kind of say, well, you kind of talk to their avatar and say, bye. You know, I'm out of here. And know you have a right to do that without any guilt, without any feeling you're supposed to fix them, or without buying into the guilt trips they'll often use to hold you. Because guilt is one of the biggest weapons that's used by the Phantom Matrix people and the Weesadek people. You're supposed to be this. Look at all I've done for you. I've done this, I've done that. What are you going to be without me? What am I going to be without you? I need you so desperately. oh, I'm going to fall apart, my life's going to be totally terrible, I'm just going to die. My mother used to do this. My heart. I feel it. I feel it. And I just say, here we go again. All right. So, you know, if you're going to have a heart attack, damn it, get it over with. I'll get you to a doctor. We'll get you the best care possible, but damn it, get it over with. You've been having a heart attack for the last 10 years. You know what I mean? Every time I wouldn't do what you wanted me to. You know what I mean? Learn to see the game that's meant to take your power and put it elsewhere, aside from where you are. If you can learn to do this, and lovingly, I mean, hopefully it won't get so bad where you have to say, well, we just have the heart attack already. Because that'll go, they actually might, you know? You know? I remember I said to my grandmother, because she used to do that too, and she wouldn't talk to me for 6 months. And then she tried to call me to lecture me on how terrible I was and see, I punished you for not talking to me for 6 months, and I wouldn't talk to her for 6 months. I'd say, oh, love you, bye. And I'd hang up for 6 months. I was the only person in the whole family that ever stood up to her. Ever. I mean, the adult children, the whole bit, oh, God, here she comes again. Oh, okay, yes, we'll do that, we'll do that, we'll do that. You know? Just, excuse me. You can treat me with respect, I'll treat you with respect. If you're going to try to bully me and try to jerk me around and tell me I don't have a right to feel what I feel, be who I am, and still be okay, there's a problem here. And if you're going to make it my problem, okay, I'm just not going to talk to you anymore. And I literally played the same game and reflected it back. About 5 months after I wouldn't receive the calls, I got this call. It's me. Don't hang up. Okay. Hello, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? Very good. Nice to speak to you. Nice to speak to you too. Whole new precedent in the relationship was set because I stood my ground. I was a wimp when I was a kid. I just wanted people to be happy. And if they weren't happy, it was always my fault. So I always tried extra hard to try to make people happy. You can't make people happy. Happiness is a choice we each make. If we remember these things as we move along, we will be able to hold our freedom inside of ourselves. Freedom is something we always have, regardless of what the hologram is doing. Even if we're in prison, even if we're being persecuted, we have the freedom to interpret what that means and what we're going to do with it. If you do the right thing with it, which is go to higher spaces and places directly through yourself, you will find the door out of whatever the nasty hologram is that you're in. There's always the door out, but it's inside, not out here. So, that said, we're in amazing times. We're going to see some rocking, but probably not rolling, which is good. Could be worse. Yeah. If you think your life is bad, look at somebody who's his worst. You know, like if you're like frustrated because you don't have enough money, look at the people who don't have water or food. You think you've got it bad? Nah. Start to appreciate the things that you have. In the written material, we didn't have time to cover it, but in the written material that you received in both the Dance for Life and the Dance for Love program, you got, in the Dance for Life, 12 attitudes of mastery that will help you on your way there. And in the Dance for Love program, you got 12 responsibilities of mastery. And they were a little tougher. They're a little tougher than the attitudes. It's a time to take responsibility for your hologram. Read those over. Think about them. Work with them. They're the keys to your freedom. The keys out of the hologram program that's been running here that taught you to put your power in somebody else's hands and then blame them when your life doesn't work. That's what the people who have heart attacks every time you don't do what they want you to do are running on. They need to control somebody else to make their life work. Very disempowering place to be. You don't need to choose that. The 3 paths of Genesis are beginning. They're actually celebrations for each race. Every one of us, for millions of years at this point, have been evolving around us, along a certain line of development, all kind of smashed in together in some ways that were unholy and weren't even intended. At this point, each group will get to have what it was originally aiming for. You'll have the Masters of the Universe crew over there running their hierarchy, and the exteriorization of the hierarchy will come into the reality of the people who are following those belief systems. You have the people who all along have only wanted true connection to God and freedom and truth and integrity. Well, those things meant something to them. That's a path. That's one of the paths. That's the path I'm on. I'm not going to surrender. They could take everything in my universe away from me, but they're not going to change that. There is an uncompromising reality. Now, you know how they always teach you, oh, well, the way to get along with everybody is to compromise? To a point. There is a point where there needs to be a substance within you, a conviction that you find through your inner parts, through your connection to God, that is utterly untouchable. Don't care what anybody else says, does, threatens, promises. It is uncompromising. Your relationship to God should be uncompromising if you want to get its fullness, if you want to know the joy of what existence means. That is the untouchable little sacred box, the little treasure buried inside. That I'll negotiate just about anything, but don't touch my set of ethics, because you can rip my fingernails out one by one, you can do Chinese water torture on me, you can dismember me if necessary, but you will not change my spiritual conviction, because I know the truth that it brings. Each of you can find this in your own way, in your own relationship to God. Your way might be on the same path as mine, but it won't be my way. It will be yours. Each of us has our own path back. I hope that you will carry that knowing of uncompromising integrity. Nothing will make me compromise. If you could say to yourself, nothing will make me compromise my spiritual integrity. Nothing. I'm not going to, no book, no priest with a funny hat, no mother, father, sister, brother, child, no matter how much I love them. Me and God come first. If you can do that, no matter what happens in the world, even if we didn't even have a chance to do another workshop to let you know what to do with your codes next, you would still have enough of a connection if you can make that choice. Me and God come first. Before anything, before food, before water, before people, other people. Doesn't mean they don't count. It means if you and God come first, all the rest will come easier. That's the most important message in any of the teachings we have. Now, basically, we've pretty much covered the things that were on the itinerary. We've touched on the land entrustments. You could do a whole workshop on land entrustments. There's a lot more questions with that than there is answers right now. But know that we each have coded in our DNA a place on Earth Terra Gaia that we agreed to help ascend. The Earth agreed to help us heal and learn the things that we were doing here. And we agreed to bring a certain part, a very special part of the Earth through. Each of us have a piece of that. We also have a piece of our shadow, the part that's still running Metatronic coding, that's coded to another piece of the grids that's meant to drop the reversals. If you get a feeling of, oh, I should be here, no, I should be here, oh, I should be here, it's like being a yo-yo. What you're feeling is the shadow body pulling you one way and the rest of you pulling you the other. The only thing that's going to get you to the point where you can make a distinction between what's coming from the shadow body and the Metatronic programming and what's really coming from you and your own Christo self is working with the D12 frequency and the higher frequencies and bringing them through more. You'll start to get sensitive to feeling stuff. You'll start to sense it. You'll start to say, that feels like a darn record in my head. What is that? I've heard that for years. And if you start looking at the things that are running through your head, there's a space in the mind. You have your conscious mind where you're aware of your thoughts. You have your subconscious mind where all sorts of garbage is running right now thanks to the Metatronic program. There's a little piece of you down there going, help me! Because Metatronic program is really trying to railroad the emotional body and the physical cellular consciousness. All right, so you literally have a piece of yourself that's very polarized in D1 and D2. All right, that's your subconscious mind. Then there's a middle zone. And the middle zone is where they play the records, or the CDs from the radial body of the planet that's being fed in from the beer we're running through, where it attempts to take your logical mind here, run it through the CD, and then bring up the piece of the Metatronic reversal from the shadow self and wind them together to direct you where they want you to go. The only way to get fluent in a language is to learn the language and practice. To get fluent in determining which is really you and which is some dumb program that's running from somewhere that you don't want anymore and it doesn't serve you, is to start to pay attention to your thoughts, to start to spend time and give yourself time with you, with yourself. Say, okay, self. Hi. Long time no see. Who am I? Any clue? And you will start to find, you can ask any question. If you get real quiet and ask any silly question that has to do with you, there's a place you'll find where you get two answers. The program and the real one. And you'll start to be able to feel the difference between the two. This has to do with the exercise that we talked about before, being able to sense which things are shifted in which particle, and angular rotation of particle spin, which are going in which direction. You can begin to sense it in yourself. And it's not something somebody can give you point A, point B, point C, do this, 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 and this, and then you'll get it. This is the thing, feeling and tuning in to your sensations of how energy is moving through you, or what are going to get you to be able to do this. You all have an intuitive self, which desperately tries to be a bridge between your spirit and your conscious self, but it's still working through the muck that's in the emotional body and all the other programming. If you know, once you're aware, this is the key, the awareness. Your mental body knows now. There's another voice that doesn't belong there, and there's a voice that does. That, right there, is one of your most powerful weapons. Because every time yourself says something to yourself, you can say, okay, we'll look at that. You don't immediately have to say, oh, yes, yes. Wait a minute, what is that again? Do I agree with this? Ask yourself if you're agreeing with yourself when you feel impulses coming up to do something. Find the inner shadow and the inner light and make the choice for the light. And run the frequencies and use the codes. Even using optical pineal induction of the mathematics that are being given will give you keys to freedom, because they're beginning to release those vector codes in the field, which means they're beginning to allow your radial body light fields to completely merge with you here. They're not going to merge like boof, this, because you blow up. They're going to merge slowly with the DNA template. This is the fastest way to do it without dematerializing yourself prematurely, let's say. All right. As far as, it's kind of funny, I never know how to end these things, because they're technically like the never-ending saga. There is no end to these workshops. This knowledge, this information, it goes on forever. That's why we're learning to try to pace it, you know. Because we've run ourselves ragged in the last 2 years, just trying to get things, get it on paper, get it ready for the next thing. And then there's it's like floods that come. And it's like, do we have any whiteout? Do we have any paper? It's coming now, right? There's never time to catch up with it. We all need to find balance. We're working to do that. You're all working to do that, even if you don't know it yet. When you leave from this trip, I hope you've had a good experience. I mean, we've all seen some beautiful spaces, especially Paxos. I mean, my heart just went, oh, home, that's home. I've been there a long time ago, oh, that's home. If you have a feeling for Paxos, it's because that was our one last stronghold safe zone that the Gray Lines could run through and hide. We had a barrier over that area, and it's actually still there. It's not quite as strong as it was once, but things couldn't come and follow us there. We raised Gray Lines there and then sent them out into the world to carry on the Christos gene line. This was a nursery that allowed the continuation of the races. We wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't for Paxos and its secure territories. There's a couple other places, 22 I believe they said. I don't know where they are yet. We tend to stumble on them. They say, oh, go here for this. Oh, and by the way, once you're here, it's this too. They give us more information. So I think the final thing that I would like to, they always say that people remember the last thing that happens. Like if you go to a thing, an event or a situation, rather than remembering the first thing or the middle, memory tends to work where you remember the last thing. And I'm thinking, thank you, universe, this is good. Because Paxos was a wonderful last thing to remember. We had a little juggling of schedules to do, but hour by hour we actually got in a little bit extra, I think, compared to what we were originally programmed for, on the program. It was done here and there and here and there, but it managed to bring itself around. We've touched on the things that were most important. We've gone in depth on the things that were most important, and we've touched on the things that are more data to come. because there is more information to come. We have the Dance for Freedom course coming up in November. And it's frustrating for us because we would like to be able to have perfectly done course books of 200 plus pages so people who couldn't afford to come on the trips could get the data too. It takes 6 months to put one of those together from the information given in one of these workshops. And we haven't been given the time in between them to do it. We have to be ready with the next Dance for program for November for France. So the people who do bother to come and whose spirits have provided for them where they can, it means you were meant to get it first and fast. There's a reason for that I don't know. It goes with you. So if you are able to join us in the next ones, that will be wonderful. There are 2 more dance floors. They let us know today that the final Dance for program, they had told us originally it would be in 2003, but they didn't tell us where. I mean, the other one they told us would be France, and they told us this one would be here. It's going to be in Paxos, and it's going to be for about 12 days. Now, the whole 12 days aren't going to be programmed. We'll work the program in there, probably in a way that allows people who can't come for 12 but can come for 7 to get it done in that period, where the rest will be, extra stuff that we get to do and, like have a good time at the place and really spend some time with the island and the spaces that exist on the island. We're going to try to do some hiking down through those caves where we went in by water. There's one you could definitely access by land. We want to get in there and do some work. So that's what it looks like May of next year. Probably toward the end, somewhere middle end of May. Yeah. There's one other thing that this is the first time this is going to be publicly released, but we'll tell it to this group first. When we went on Plan B, because of the things that we've talked about over this, this weekend, this 11 days, however many days we've been here, it's an eternity. In March, after the grids phase locked, on March 23rd, when the beast began its awakening cycle, we were put on Plan B notice, which means something in relation to how we position Azurite Temple in relation to the 3D world structure that's out there. We have been asked to change its structure. It was just about we were in the process. We incorporated as a non-for-profit organization in 1999. Did all the papers and the whole bit. Now, in the United States, there's a thing with non-for-profits that you can basically be a not-for-profit that's not particularly endorsed by the government. That means if people give you donations or anything like that, they can't write it off because you're not officially recognized by the government, but you're still considered a non-for-profit organization. Now, we didn't want to go just for that zone. We wanted to go for the real thing. If we're going to be a temple, we're going to be a temple. So it took about 2 years. We were submitting we had to submit pictures of the house and where we gave ceremony and pictures of us when we're doing ordination and all this stuff to the government to get the certification. We just got the whole package done and it was in. Got the accountants that were handling everything to show how the records were being handled right. And then Plan B happened. Plan B means we go back to the government people in the offices we sent these packages to and say, we changed our mind. We don't want your certification. If you can think of what's happening with the Catholic Church right now, one very good way to take down a church, a temple, or a nonprofit organization is to send in ministers who aren't really ministers, who go and do damage to people under your name, to the point where you become liable, and then the legal system can kick in and stop you. We were warned in advance that it was going to go in that direction. We've had a number of Nephilim infiltrations, our ministers, that started to ministering something else under our name, using our teachings, but twisting them, to the point where they could damage. And we were told this was just the beginning. We were told to pull the nonprofit status. It doesn't do us any good. I mean, nonprofit status, a lot of people say, oh, well, you don't have to pay taxes. Actually, we do on personal income. I mean, it's not something we get any, benefits on. Actually, it's a lot more paperwork than it's really worth as far as anything. It was never for personal gain. It was to show the public that we were here for them. At this point, we've been asked to change the form to a basic small partnership that's held by the 3 speakers. The 3 of us hold it. It is going to be Azurite Press of the Melchizedek Cloister Emerald Order. Its purpose is to continue the teachings It's much more difficult to sue a press. We don't have to police a bunch of ministers. If you notice, when we, in our service, give the gift from your own avatars to transmit that you are ministers, and we give you a piece of paper that officially in the outside world is recognized, okay, you're a minister. We can't take on the responsibility for any of you. If you go out and damage people, if we were making priests that went and molested altar boys, it's interesting, we would be sued. They would take us down, flatten us. They would make it so we couldn't even afford to put our teachings on paper. We're internalizing the temple. Azurite temple, if the Melchizedek cloister exists, there's one in the inner earth Eka spaces. There's one on Tara in the Vekas. There's several in other places in the universe. But right now, it is a danger to put ourselves out as a temple structure. So we're going to become a little bit more known as perhaps publishers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the progressive aspect that the beloveds have pointed out to us
Yes.
is that as we work to raise the arcs, let's say, the temples will be floated by the people that provide the service of being arc leaders. It will be embodied by those who understand. It won't be necessary to present a front or a presence that extends certain kinds of innocent, loving support to those who will corrupt the intention. There is no room in Plan B for that. It just doesn't exist. It doesn't get on the agenda. Because Plan B requires us to be it,
We are the temple.
not to be members of it.
Each
It's
one.
no longer externalized. It's no longer an abstraction of anybody's reality. It's no longer a crutch. It's no longer a target. It's no longer anything but what you make it.
There's no longer a coattail to ride on for those who aren't really there.
And what we're being asked to do is to begin to understand and be prepared to become the thing that we refer to as the ARC project, which is partly the land entitlement project. But it's wider than that, as you will discover in months to come. Nevertheless, the change from Azurite temple to press, on paper, technically, all that corporate hoo-hoo.
Yeah, I really didn't like
You know,
that stuff from the beginning.
As plan A fades, so does all that. Right? We're getting down to it, right? We're biting the love bullet, so to speak. Yes. And it's simple. It's time for us to become the temple.
In the true meaning of the word.
And we embrace those who can handle the embrace. And we don't judge anybody who can't. There are those that will come into our space as time passes, who will come in and go, oh, and go.
And
they might be nice.
Run out the door.
They won't be able to stay. And there are people who will come, who you look at and think, what are you doing here? You go, remember who you are? Come on in.
Work on it.
You know? And they will bring something to the temple that is you. You know, they'll come and remind you that you are this thing called a temple, an embodiment. Right?
Yeah.
And it's going to be fun amidst all the muck and bullets. So that's really why we're making a change.
It's almost like we went from kindergarten to college level 3
You see,
without the midterm
You
stuff.
see, there are different ways of looking at this. But on tape or off it, there are people who seem to have contracts that are kind of like major pains in the French word is derrière. And seem to regard those of us who want to discover what it means to be Christed as some kind of new kind of pheasant. some kind of blood sport, right? And it's awfully tedious because you can see it coming. You think, oh, not another one of them. We were tying knots in so many gun barrels over the last several months. You won't believe it, really. It's nuts. And the Plan B thing provides us with a perfect situation in which we can say something in a really constructive way that has needed to be said for a long time. Even at the stage when Plan A was still there, and where the best provisions we thought we could make would be to register the temple as a corporation, do all that, not program. But really, it doesn't take much thinking about to realise that the best principles of the Azarite Temple, Makila, the Closet Emerald, don't need one.
The last thing in the world the Iani need
They never need one,
is,
really.
is the U.S. government to endorse their existence. Give me a break.
So,
Go ahead.
So, the announcement is, hello, Azarite Temple. How nice to see you all.
So good to see you too.
At last. Here it is, where it needs to be. Not on a piece of paper, not in some IRS records department, but here.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll also still give you ordination certificates, because we will still do ordinations.
Absolutely.
Not by government endorsement, but by Iani endorsement, by God's endorsement. And we don't use ordinations as a structure to control people. We acknowledge the gift. It's a gift we can give to the universe by saying to the avatars that you're all connected to, if we can help you, here we are. We've activated certain frequencies so you can ground energy fast through us. That's why we make good ministers. When I was 4, my contact began directly. When I was 7, I began to get the initiations that would allow me to transmit the frequency that I am right now. My initiations were done in inner earth. That was the beginning. That was like an experiment. I was like a lab rat to see if it would hold and take, where it could be passed on to another minister and another who were ready, who had the codes in their own DNA. It's been working wonderfully. All of us are ministers if we actually truly want to follow the Christos path, the path of our direct connection to God. Who needs creator gods? Who needs guys with big egos saying, worship me and I'll get you home? It's like, would you really want to go home to one of those anyway? I mean, what are you going to deal with when you get home? A big authoritarian father god. Joy, joy. Can I go out and play? No. Am I allowed to date boys? No. You know what I mean? I mean, good luck. There is a space where God is free. God is always free. With the change in the temple right now, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be like parting the Red Sea. Because those who have been wanting to be ministers, in order to use that space, in order to do harm to other people that they wouldn't get to touch if it wasn't for the fact that they were carrying our name with them, it's not going to work for them anymore. We're a press now. We're, let's say, a record-keeping department, where the temple itself is an inner earth. The ones who are truly the ministers of Azarite Temple will be taught first, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, how to go to where the temple is and to meet the people who run it. That's quite an honor. They're amazing beings. They're us in the future. We can walk up to ourselves and meet it. The way time and the hologram work, we can meet our future selves, and they can meet us and know. We can each know. Our Iani selves are in inner earth. There are selves about 2,000, 2,500 years in the future. They are alive in their space-time right now. They are aware of us, and they are trying to get us out of this mess down here. That's where the real temple is. So we wanted to let you know, and we're going to put an official posting out on, on the website and things about the change.
Can I share that?
Yeah.
As well?
Can I finish?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
As always.
Is? Thought you were finished. You're not finished?
Oh,
All right.
I'll do it finish, all right?
You go finish first then. Go ahead. Yep, speaker 2 is coming alive.
You get some people on TV that do that, don't you? it all just happens.
It's so nice. It's not just me. I constantly hear myself talk in my head. I'm sick of it. It's great to have others, the two other speakers alive and with us.
I do work in Sarasota, it's true.
Yes.
Anyway, I just needed to say, and on tape too, that the consequence of this is that technically the Regent's Consulate's covenants are effectively withdrawn, since the Azurite Temple as an incorporated corporation will cease to be from the 1st of July this year. We will reissue covenants, since I noticed that in former times of office management, certain of them were sent out without proper name and address sections in which they were returned not signed anyway.
Office management.
Interesting how the universe provides for certain circumstances.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that the modified covenants, the content won't change, but the headers will be reissued, and you'll be invited to sign the covenants and send them back. We will, between us, representing at times, let's say, competitive spirit fused with compassion, review the covenants as they're reissued, and do our best to support people who are badge collectors in releasing them from obligation, and try and preserve or support the integrity of those people who are truly consulates, is what I'm trying to say. Those newer people who become regents, as the few who have this evening today, will be provided with a certificate. I'm going to explain a little bit about that now. We don't like to support those kinds of levels of distinction where you get a purple certificate for this and one that drips gold for that. And so you notice that the certificate is common, really, and that there is a regent certificate. At the bottom, you'll notice that those who have reflected on what it means to be that and have asked to see and know and feel what covenant means and what it involves, have indicated their commitment to doing that, and they've got a silver foil in the corner.
They're the consulates, right?
And that is the only acknowledgement we feel is appropriate to those who've actually taken the step to that level of service, because that's all we're talking about. So the mechanism from now forward will be that when people come to level 3, they will be ordained regent, as today. Those people freely in their own way will inform themselves as to what it means to be a consulate, to ask other regent consulates, because that's what they're there for, to support each other, what it means to be that, what do they think about, how do they feel about it, what contribution to the general body would they like to make, and so on, until eventually they decide that they want to send the form back to wherever we are. And what will happen is that we'll provide the paperwork, and you will send your certificate. You will get a silver foil with a new seal on top of that, which will acknowledge the fact that you've signed the covenant and you've got your certificate back. So it'll be a two-stage affair. Right.
I think there's a part that the people who are just coming in might not have any idea of what the Regent Consulate is about.
Well, I was trying to make the point that they know it exists.
Yes, so they can get a hold of other Regent Consulates, right?
If they feel drawn to want to know what it is, there are plenty of them around, and it isn't our job to sell it. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, because it's not a product we're not selling.
I want them to feel something about it. I want them to start to get nosy, and to wonder what other steps there are in
Is there something on the website that if they decide they want to be consulates that they can contact somebody through the website, perhaps?
Absolutely.
I just wouldn't want to leave anybody hanging that didn't know how to get
No problem.
They didn't know how to get in touch, and they decided, what is this consulate thing? I might want to be a part. I will let loose just a little bit of the consulate thing.
Anyway, I finished.
Are you? I was going to ask if you had before I did that.
Of something else, though.
Okay. You feel free to interrupt at any time.
Oi.
Hello. See, I'm not the only person that sees things that aren't there. Shall I not say anything?
Please continue.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say something.
No.
All right. The Regent Consulate is basically kind of like, how you have consulates of one country in another country? We're the ones being trained as the representatives of the Eoni races in relation to Earth. We'll also be the first ones that will be trained in direct contact When that is initiated, the Regent Consulate will be the first group of individuals to experience contact. And because they've shown that they have more interest and more commitment to the whole thing, caring about what's happening on a planetary level, galactic level, wanting to help in that process. Some people are too busy worrying about silly things, like personal stuff. Some people are trying to figure out, how much money they can take into Inner Earth with them, and if they should convert it to gold or what, that kind of thing. People have their own spaces, and that's okay. Not everybody should be a Regent Consulate right away. It shouldn't be something just because you think it's a good thing that you rush into. It should be because you're in a peaceful space in yourself, and you say, oh, I might not be perfect, but I think I'm doing pretty good. I think I know what to do with my Merkaba, and I might not be doing it perfect all the time, but I know in a pinch, if it really came down to last call for the gates, I'd be able to really pump it up really fast and get myself through. I'm doing pretty good. I'm okay. All right. That's when the time is you start thinking about what can I do for the bigger picture, the planet, the other people, that kind of thing. That's the time when you think about Regent Consulate. Yeah. For some of the people just coming into this wouldn't be a good time. First, digest some of this. Let it sit with you for a bit. Let your spirit make peace with it.
There are no vacancies for salesmen, by the way.
Well, then decide.
And anyway, unless you can play football like David Beckham, it's too late. Only the Europeans got that.
Yeah, the Europeans got that. I'm lost too. There's some wonderful European references that I'm still learning about that I haven't a clue because I'm just the American wife, right?
Just.
There's a very interesting dynamic between the way Americans are taught to think and the way people in Europe. Well, I don't know about Europe. I can't speak for Europe, but I can speak for Britain. just for this person. I don't know if all Britons like this, but
I speak tonight for the destiny of man. And the dignity of mankind.
But you have too much chin.
Mara's loving this one.
You're not a chinless wonder.
Yeah. He thinks.
I know. I'm just a dumb American wife saying, hey, this is a reference my beloved British husband has used. He calls them the chinless wonders. And I said, what's a chinless wonder? And he said, those stuffy guys in the church that think they're so hot. He can do the accent really well. I can't. But anyway.
Mara just said to
me,
he reckons that with the most fun since Barabbas won the decision over Jesus.
Oh, dear. Oh, it's Barabbas won the decision over Jesus. Oh,
J9, sorry.
J9.
J9.
So I'm just